I was reborn, transported back to the very day Jianyu confessed his feelings to me. The barbecue stall was a mess, with skewers scattered all over the table, while our friends huddled together telling jokes. Jianyu was wearing the full Hongjia High School uniform, a crisp black blazer with the school badge pinned neatly in place, his leather shoes polished to a shine. An air of refined elegance clung to him, completely at odds with the gritty, smoky street scene. He walked right up to me and said, "Xing Yunhui, I like you too, let's be together." The lamb skewer in my hand clattered to the ground. The person before me still had that youthful look, with a pair of silver-rimmed non-prescription glasses perched on the bridge of his nose, refined and handsome, the very face I had loved for 10 years. A voice welled up from the depths of my heart, say yes to him, now. My friend started egging us on. I stood up and said calmly, "I refuse." Jianyu's eyes widened slightly. He certainly hadn't expected me to turn him down. After all, everyone knows I had a thing for Jianyu. I pursued him with a desperation that could only be described as pathetic. "Xing Yunhui, think carefully," he said, his voice calm. That was indeed his usual style, able to regain his composure swiftly no matter the situation. "Well, it's true I used to have feelings for you," I said with a bright smile, "but not anymore." Jianyu turned his back and walked away without another word. I waved to my friends, "Keep eating, everyone, just a minor hiccup, don't let it ruin our fun." I took a big, satisfying bite of a skewer, so delicious. Back when I was the young mistress of the Jian family, if I'd dared to eat at a street stall, scandalous headlines would have been plastered everywhere the next day. It's better to just be myself. Thinking back, the tragedy of my relationship with Jianyu in my past life wasn't solely his fault. I was part of the problem too. In my first year of high school, my 14 years as a left-behind child came to an end. My parents, who had been running a business abroad, returned in glory. To make it up to me, they pulled some strings to transfer me from Shirya No. 1 high school to Hongjia High School. Around here, Hongjia High School is commonly known as the elite private school. On my first day at the new school, I fell for Jianyu at first sight and began my long, devoted campaign to win him over. If Jianyu was thirsty, I handed him water. If he caught a cold, I brought him medicine. When he played the piano, I was his most enthusiastic audience. At Hongjia, my most enduring routine was acting like a human alarm clock, greeting Jianyu with a good morning every day and bidding him a "see you tomorrow" after school. My persistence, or perhaps my sheer audacity, paid off. Jianyu gradually shifted from polite refusals to simply nodding and returning my good morning. Our relationship changed because of a kidnapping. I spotted Jianyu alone from a distance and eagerly ran over to say hello. The next second, 2 burly men got out of a van and shoved us inside. He was their target, I was just collateral, deep in the remote wilderness. The kidnappers efficiently broke Jianyu's leg and locked both of us in a basement. They demanded 500,000 from my parents, and 10 million from yours. "Jianyu, I had no idea your family was that wealthy," I murmured to myself. Jianyu let out a soft, pained chuckle. Something must have happened with the kidnappers, as no one came down for a full day and night, fearing we'd be trapped to death. Jianyu and I found a shovel in the basement and used it to break the door down. There was no one outside the door, they could be back any minute. "You should go first," Jianyu said calmly. I glanced at his leg, walked in front of him, turned my back, and crouched down. "Get on, if we're leaving, we leave together." "I'm not leaving you here alone," I said, turning my head to smile at him. "Don't worry, I grew up rough in the countryside, I'm plenty strong." That night was endless, carrying Jianyu on my back. I trudged through the dense, dark woods, in the hospital. Jianyu asked me why I had saved him. "Because I like you," I said, drawing out the words, tilting my head and smiling at him. Jianyu stared at my face and didn't say a word for a long time. I felt so disheartened back then. Jianyu never stopped me from getting close to him, but he never gave me a clear response either. He probably didn't like me at all. I decided to transfer schools. Apart from chasing after Jianyu, I was actually pretty miserable at Hongjia High. Everyone there was superficially friendly but kept you at arm's length, and they all had these picture-perfect life plans. I'm from a different world than them. Laughing and catching up with old friends at a roadside stall, I felt a familiar sense of peace return, and right at that moment, Jianyu confessed his feelings to me. I said yes. That was the beginning of my misfortune. Jianyu is the heir to his family's business, carrying the weight of its responsibilities and expectations on his shoulders. Being with me was considered a stain on their family's honor. To erase this blemish, Jianyu's family made countless efforts, ultimately resigning themselves to a reluctant compromise. After graduating from university, Jianyu and I overcame all odds and finally got married. When I got married, many people whispered behind my back, calling me a scheming social climber. I told myself that true love conquers all. In the first year, I was expected to give up my career and dutifully settle into my role as the Jiang family's daughter-in-law. The second year was spent navigating a minefield of social obligations and gossip at endless parties, where every move had to be perfectly calculated. It was also the year I witnessed the countless sordid and dirty secrets hidden within these wealthy families. By the third year, Jiangyu and I still had no children. And the papers began to run sporadic gossip columns about his romantic escapades. By the fourth year, everything exhausted me. While Jiangyu commanded respect and thrived in the business world, full of ambition, our relationship had hit rock bottom. He said to me, "Yunhui, let's go abroad for surrogacy." I replied with a cold laugh, "Surrogacy is illegal." Jiangyu's brow furrowed slightly. I knew that in the eyes of people like him, the law was merely a servant to wealth. "Yunhui, I need a child, then go find someone else to have one with," I said, utterly weary. In the 5th year of my marriage to Jiangyu, my feelings for him had completely eroded, and I was finally ready to admit the failure of this union. I brought up divorce with Jiangyu. The phone rang, and the woman on the other end said with a smug tone, "You and AU were never from the same world." Then, a car came speeding toward me at a dangerously high velocity. Wait. Is a divorce really worth killing me over? After rejecting Jiangyu's confession, I transferred schools immediately. What's it like to prepare for the college entrance exam after being reborn? It's hellish, endless exams and mountains of books to memorize. Life was a monotonous, day in, day out routine, but it was a comforting monotony. I trudged home, my fingers hooked around the strap of my backpack. A delinquent leaning against the wall at the alley's entrance gave me a menacing look, then yanked me into the alley where a few others blocked my path. I sighed, unzipped my backpack, and started looking for my wallet. "Hey," a voice called out. The troublemakers squinted as they looked back. Jiangyu stood silhouetted against the light at the mouth of the alley. He walked over, took off the glasses from the bridge of his nose, and then handed them to me. I took it in a daze, and Jiangyu gave me a smile. The next second, he punched the lead thug in the face, and chaos instantly erupted. Jiangyu's figure nimbly dodged the incoming blows, taking one of them down in mere seconds. Amidst the groans littering the ground, Jiangyu pulled me into a tight embrace, holding me with such force it felt like a reunion after years apart. I pushed him away with all my strength. "Jiangyu, are you okay? Why, all of a sudden, do you not like me anymore?" he asked. "Feelings don't need a reason, I just don't, that's all," I said, looking down. Just as I could never figure out why I liked Jiangyu in the first place. "Young Master Jiang, thank you for today." I tried to step past him and leave, but he grabbed my arm and held me back. "Yunhui, you also." Jiangyu's brow furrowed slightly. "Also what?" I asked, puzzled, as a sudden realization dawned on me. In my previous life, Jiangyu only started learning judo for self-defense after he was kidnapped, but this time, his leg injury has just healed. He probably hasn't had the chance to learn it yet. Jiangyu still couldn't bring himself to say those two words. I said, "Jiangyu, you're acting really strange today." On the way back, I was ranting in my head. I came back to avoid stepping into the marriage trap. What right does Jiangyu have to be reborn? He's already a winner at life. Doesn't he have enough stacked buffs as it is? I don't care what Jiangyu does in his new life. Whatever feelings we had are long gone, worn down to nothing. After getting Jiangyu's text, I blocked him without even reading it. I went ahead and deleted all my contacts related to Hongjia High School. By leaving Hongjia and cutting off that last connection, I should be free of any future contact with people from that social circle for the rest of my life. This second chance I've been given is meant for me to start my new life properly. So when I saw that flashy sports car parked in front of Experimental High School No. 1, I had a bad feeling. Leaning against a pillar, a boy stood with his arms crossed. The moment he saw me, his eyebrows shot up and a smile spread across his face. "Jing Yunhui, you've got some nerve, dumping Jiangyu." Fu Mingchuan, Jiangyu's friend, due to events from a past life. I can honestly say I despise this person. "What is it?" I asked impatiently. Fu Mingchuan grabbed my wrist and pulled me toward the car. "Jiangyu wants to see you." He was incredibly strong, and I couldn't break free. Conscious of the strange stares from the doorway, I was eventually shoved into the car. The engine roared to life. Fu Mingchuan drove at breakneck speed, heading east towards Wangshan and straight to the Jiang residence. He's sick and refuses to take his medicine, Fu Yao said matter-of-factly. I pointed at myself. I'm the doctor. Fu Mingchuan clicked his tongue in annoyance. Enough talk. Jiang Yu's room is the last one on the right, second floor. Go. I looked up. The Jiang family home was vast, yet eerily silent. It was only after spending a lot of time with Jiang Yu that I learned his parents had a typical marriage of convenience. They rarely came home, each maintaining their own residence elsewhere, and only put on a show of affection for the media when absolutely necessary. In their past life, their greatest effort for Jiang Yu was to prevent him from marrying me. I pushed open Jiang Yu's door. The full-length curtains were drawn, blocking out the sunlight and leaving the room in deep shadow. Jiang Yu lay on the bed, the medicine on the nightstand untouched. I fumbled for the light switch and turned it on. A soft, warm light illuminated Jiang Yu's pale face, his features as if carved from marble, flawless and perfect. I remember the first day I entered Hongjia High School, when I stumbled upon Jiang Yu rescuing a cat. He was bent over, carefully untying the tightly wound rope from the animal. The sunlight traced the outline of his focused profile, gentle and full of compassion. I'd call that the beginning of a fateful entanglement. Hearing the noise, Jiang Yu turned his head, a flicker of delight dancing in his eyes. Yunhui. I handed him the medicine and water together. Jiang Yu didn't refuse, quietly swallowing the pill. I think I've made myself perfectly clear, Jiang Yu. I don't have feelings for you anymore, I said slowly. I'm sorry for clinging to you these past 2 years. Jiang Yu's eyelashes fluttered slightly, against his sickly pallor. He looked rather fragile. So please, stop this. What you did today, having Fu Mingchuan bring me here, was already crossing a line. Yunhui. I don't believe it, Jiang Yu said quietly. You wouldn't give up on me that easily. I gave a careless laugh. I came today to end things, Jiang Yu. I'm about to take the college entrance exams, study what I love, and live a simple, ordinary life. You, if I remember correctly, have already been accepted to a university abroad and will take over the family business after graduation. Our paths are different. Even if we were together, it wouldn't end well, I added. Your life will still be brilliant without me. Let's not contact each other anymore. Let's just be strangers. Jiang Yu's life would still be brilliant without me. Only without Jiang Yu can I choose the lifestyle I truly desire. I should have realized this sooner. These words were meant for both of us. Strangers. Jiang Yu repeated the word. As if struck by a sudden impulse, he struggled out of bed and grabbed my arm as I turned to leave. The next second, he cupped my head and kissed me, our faces impossibly close. My eyes flew open, and I saw the raw, swirling madness in Jiang Yu's gaze. I shoved him away with all my might. Weak from his illness, Jiang Yu stumbled and fell to the floor. Have you lost your mind? I scowled. Xingyun. What did you do? Fu Mingchuan burst through the doorway, his eyes darting to Jiang Yu on the floor, filled with alarm. I wiped my lips. Jiang Yu said, Mingchuan, please take Yunhui home. His gaze was calm, as if the earlier loss of control had been a figment of my imagination. I'm sorry, Jiang Yu apologized, looking up at me. Yunhui, I won't bother you anymore. Fu Mingchuan and I walked out of the Jiang family's gate, one after the other, tossing his car keys playfully. Fu Mingchuan laughed and said, Xing Yunhui, you're quite something. I shot him a glance. Hey, did I ever tell you that Jiang Yu isn't someone you want to mess with? My relationship with Jiang Yu is over, I reiterated. Fu Mingchuan paused what he was doing, his expression turning uncharacteristically serious. Well then, I hope you won't regret it later. In this world, no one is truly indispensable to another. Time can erase everything. I won't have any regrets. Jiang Yu will find someone who is truly right for him. In September, amidst the buzzing cicadas of late summer, I was admitted to the local Z University. Along the seemingly endless tree-lined path, youthful faces flashed by one after another, joining clubs I liked, picking a couple of interesting electives, making a whole new group of friends. Every day felt fresh and meaningful. That was when Suji barged into my life. In November, as the weather turned cooler, I would often find a book at the library and spend a quiet afternoon reading in my usual spot, bathed in sunlight. I lost track of which day it was when a piece of paper was gently placed before me. The sketch was done with a casual, natural touch, its elegant lines capturing my profile. As I looked down at my book, I shifted my gaze. The boy beside me broke into a grin, his dark hair slightly long, soft and fresh against his temples. Hi, I'm Suji. He introduced himself to me right outside the library. Shuji was a person brimming with enthusiasm for everything. After we exchanged contact info, he seemed to pop up everywhere I went. When I was almost late for my morning class, he pulled up on his bike, patted the rear seat, and said, "Hop on." During the 800-meter fitness test, I was trudging along the track. From the other side, Suji ran over, stood at the finish line, raised both hands high, and shouted, "Jingyunhui, you can do it." Even for the evening elective, Suji would get there early to snag a seat by the window in the back row, waving me over and saying, "I knew you'd pick this class." After class, we'd sometimes go for a walk together. We'd talk about life, our interests, and the future. Suji was an animation major. He said he was going to make the greatest animated film ever. When he said it, his eyes were shining with a kind of infectious light that made you want to believe in him. He asked me what my dream was. I looked down and thought for a long time before saying, "I want to live the most ordinary, uneventful life, the kind of life where you can see exactly how it will be when you're old." Suji's gaze held affirmation as he nodded. "That's really great," he said. Gradually, all my friends got to know Suji. The overlap in our lives grew, and many quietly placed bets on when he and I would get together. Suji's likes and dislikes were always plain to see, just as he liked me. His first glance in any crowd would invariably be in my direction. That kind of directness made me waver. One day in May, Suji called and asked me to come downstairs. I saw him through the window. He looked up at the same moment, our eyes met, and Suji flashed a brilliant smile. Suji led me all the way to Building F at Z University. We took the elevator on the west side straight to the rooftop, where at the southern end, on the left, stood an iron ladder. Suji climbed up first, then reached out a hand. "Come on up," he said. With a sense of bewilderment, I took his hand. The ladder led to the rooftop, and the moment I climbed up, I froze in place. It was dusk. A hazy twilight stretched endlessly, enveloping the buildings one by one, leaving everything below in profound silence. Before me, the sunset painted the sky, its colors layered like ocean tides, shifting from deep blue to soft lavender. At the horizon, the last molten gold rays of the sun dipped behind the rolling mountain peaks. "Yunhui, I love you. It's the kind of love where I see you in my future, where I want to spend my whole life with you." Suji's face was blurred in the play of light and shadow. He kept his eyes downcast, looking unusually awkward and nervous. "Yunhui, I mean it. I will respect every choice you make. I will give you the life you want." The sound of the wind in my ears felt infinitely distant. I smiled, squinting my eyes. "All right, let's be together." Suji looked up, his face instantly lighting up with immense joy. He opened his arms and hugged me. Finally, he cupped my face in his hands, and I saw my own reflection in his eyes. In that moment, I truly believed that Suji sincerely loved me, and that we were destined for a happy ending. Over our 4 years at university, Suji and I grew increasingly close. We met each other's parents, shared countless experiences, and planned our future together. At our graduation dinner, in front of all our friends, Suji proposed to me. Amidst a chorus of well wishes, I smiled and let him slip that platinum ring onto my finger. Under the streetlights that stretched our shadows long, with Suji's arm around my shoulders, I lifted my hand to examine the ring closely in the light. "You've got a pretty good eye for rings, Suji replied with a tone of pride. I spent months picking it out. As I lowered my hand, I suddenly felt a gaze fixed intently on both Suji and me. I turned around. The intersection was bustling with people and traffic, and neon lights shimmered with a rippling glow. "What's wrong?" Suji followed my line of sight. "It's nothing." I brushed aside the sudden unease that rose in my heart. After I got home, I told my parents about Suji. They nodded with relief and approval. My father patted my shoulder and said, "Suji is a good person. It's wonderful that you two can make it work." It reminded me of a distant past. Around this same time, when the Jiang family cut off my father's timber business because of my relationship with Jiang Yu, my father seemed to age a decade overnight, sighing as he told me that a family like Jiang Yu's was beyond our reach. Back then, I was incredibly stubborn, believing it was all just a trial on the path for Jiang Yu's and my love to prevail. I pushed those unpleasant memories aside and chimed in, "Suji and I will make it to the end." After graduation, Suji and his like-minded friends started their own small company, full of ambition, to pursue their animation venture. The beginning is always the hardest part. Suji worked from dawn till dusk, often burning the midnight oil in our rented apartment. Fortunately, some in Suji's crew had the right connections. and they finally found a promising investor, Suji said happily. Hengji and I are meeting with the investors tonight to discuss the partnership. If we can secure the deal, our project will be able to move forward. I'm sure you'll get it, I encouraged him. Late that night, I received a text from Duan Hengji. The investors have been pushing drinks on Suji all night. Yunhui, can you come pick him up? A bit worried, I hailed a cab and headed to the address to get Suji. The venue for their business meeting was a nightclub in the city center, awash in neon lights and a palpable air of decadent indulgence. When I found Suji, he was clinging to the sofa, his cheeks flushed a deep red. Suji, I called out to him, drawing out his name. A flicker of clarity broke through the dazed, unfocused look in Suji's eyes. Recognizing me, he murmured, Yunhui. Duan Hengji shook his head helplessly from the side. Well, look at that, the moment he sees you, he can actually recognize people. I bent down and said to Suji, come on, get up, let's go home. Suji obediently let me lead him as we went downstairs with Duan Hengji. The elevator doors opened, and the person waiting there shifted their gaze, freezing for an instant. Xing Yunhui. Fu Mingchuan still carried himself with that same rakish air, while Jiang Yu beside him appeared far more mature. I offered a polite smile and gave Suji's hand a gentle, reassuring squeeze. Young Master Fu, Yunhui, so you know young Master Fu. Duan Hengji's tone was eager. I said, not really. Fu Mingchuan looked me over, shot a quick glance at Jiang Yu, and then replied, right, we're not exactly close. Yunhui, weren't we going home? Suji murmured, drowsy and confused. Looking at me with bleary, unfocused eyes, I soothed him, saying, okay. Let's go home. Then I nodded a farewell to Fu Mingchuan and the others. We'll be off now. Fu Mingchuan raised his hand and gave a gentle wave. Goodbye, let's never meet again. I sighed deeply in my heart. Running into Jiang Yu after 4 years was far too sudden. Of course, I wasn't naive enough to think he'd still be pining for me after all this time. It's not like he's short of women, it's just that meeting is inevitably awkward. Best to avoid it if we can. Suji's investor is Xingqiao Media. I found out at the celebration banquet. Xingqiao is a subsidiary of the Jiang Group. Yunhui, what's wrong? Suji turned to look at me, his eyes brimming with warmth. It's nothing. I stood up and raised my glass with everyone. We were all so young, our hearts brimming with boundless dreams. Xingqiao's investment was the perfect catalyst, capable of helping Suji and his team get infinitely closer to their goal. I silently scolded myself for overthinking. Who was Jiang Yu? He wouldn't even glance at a fledgling animation studio. Yet, 3 months later, Suji was taken away from the company by the police. Mr. Su, you are involved in an economic case, please cooperate with the investigation. Suji's eyes were vacant, and whispers began to ripple through the surrounding crowd. I frowned. What's going on? The officer shook his head. We are not at liberty to disclose any information until the investigation is concluded. Duan Hengji stepped forward, his tone light. It's just cooperating with the investigation. We all know Suji, he'll be fine. Suji seemed to snap out of it then. He turned back and gave me a reassuring smile. Don't worry, Yunhui, I'll be back soon. I stood there, rooted to the spot, watching Suji and the police officer disappear through the door. Duan Hengji was also watching them go. When I finally snapped out of my daze, I caught a glimpse of complex, shifting emotions in his eyes. A few days later, I was released from the detention center, having achieved nothing. They hadn't allowed me to visit Suji. The screen lit up. I looked down at my phone. It was an unknown number. I answered. Jiang Yu's detached voice came through. Yunhui, we need to meet. I don't think you want to see Suji go to prison. The world seemed to crash around me. All the unease and doubt I'd buried deep inside finally made sense. So, Jiang Yu had never given up. Pushing open the door to Jiang Yu's office, I found him already waiting. He was leaning back against the sofa, legs crossed, his calm gaze meeting mine through his glasses. Have a seat. I tried to keep my voice steady. What did you do to Suji? Jiang Yu smiled. Yunhui, after all these years, the first thing you say to me is about Suji. Suji is my fiancé, I said, sitting down across from him, enunciating each word deliberately. Jiang Yu looked up. Your fiancé embezzled investment funds from Xingqiao. 1 million. That's enough to put him away for 5 years. I clenched my fists. Suji would never do such a thing. You're framing him. You really trust him that much? Jiang Yu pushed the file folder on the table forward. A pity. The evidence is irrefutable. The evidence is rock solid. If Jiang Yu decides to press charges, Suji will serve a full 5 years in prison. And his life will be ruined. What do you want? Two choices. Either Suji goes to jail, or I let him go. Jiang Yu's gaze settled on me. And you come back to me. Jiang Yu, are you out of your mind? I retorted, a bitter laugh escaping me in my fury. A faint smile touched Jiang Yu's lips. I'm just setting things right. Setting what right? I may have been hung up on you for 2 years, but we never actually. It was more than 2 years. Jiang Yu cut me off, his tone turning insistent. Yun Hui, what we had was never meant to be just 2 years. Right, in another time, another place, Jiang Yu and I fell in love, got married, and then it all ended in ruins. Yun Hui, it's time to choose. Jiang Yu took off his glasses, his gaze steady and confident, as if holding all the cards. From what I understand, Suji's family is not well off, and his father has a heart condition. If he were to suddenly learn that his only son is going to prison, I doubt he could withstand the shock. It was as if I was seeing Jiang Yu for the first time. Or perhaps, this was the real him, stripped of all his gentle pretenses, revealing nothing but ruthless calculation beneath the surface. Jiang Yu bought an apartment in the city for the two of us. It wasn't large, but it had a full wall of floor-to-ceiling windows, furniture of natural wood, and a warm-toned decor. It was far better than that desolate villa in Wangshan. He acted as if he were genuinely in a relationship, playing the part of the boyfriend with meticulous dedication. He would drop me off at work in the morning, and by the time I left the office in the afternoon, he was already waiting at the corner. One day, I even came back to the apartment and found Jiang Yu in the kitchen, trying to learn how to cook. I fell silent. In my past life, I was the one learning to cook. Back then, Jiang Yu's mother thought my job at the magazine was beneath our family, and she forced me to quit to focus solely on being a good wife to him. The first time Jiang Yu tasted a meal I cooked, he seemed genuinely pleased. At first, I felt a flicker of happiness from his approval, but as time went on, the monotony was inevitable. Quitting my job made it feel like my entire world began to revolve around Jiang Yu, and I gradually lost sight of who I used to be. In the kitchen, Jiang Yu wore a look of intense concentration, his chopping movements noticeably clumsy. I couldn't help but speak up. Actually, we could hire a housekeeper. Jiang Yu transferred the chopped vegetables to a plate, not looking up. Yun Hui, I can do this, wait outside for a bit, dinner will be ready soon. If I hadn't seen him working in his study late into the night, I'd genuinely suspect he'd been stripped of his heir status and had nothing better to do. Jiang Yu took me to a party and introduced me to his friends. They greeted me warmly, their glances a mix of friendliness and curious scrutiny. Someone asked how Jiang Yu and I got together. With a faint smile, he replied, we were classmates in high school. After going through a lot together later on, we just ended up together. Ah, a school romance, how enviable, his friend said. I looked at Jiang Yu, his smile unwavering, seeing that they were about to delve deeper into the topic. I made an excuse to step out and avoid it. Inside the upscale club, the ambience was sophisticated, the lighting intimate. As I stepped out of the restroom, someone suddenly bumped right into me. The girl who had bumped into me looked up, tears streamed down her lovely face, her eyes wide with fear. I froze. It was her. The people from behind caught up. Fu Mingchuan sauntered forward, his gaze impatient. What are you running for? He noticed me, and his tone softened a little. Oh, Jing Yunhui. You're here too. I pulled the girl behind me, shielding her. What are you doing? I asked. Fu Mingchuan narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, just having a bit of fun. Don't believe me? Ask her. Then he glanced at the girl. Get over here. The person behind me kept their head bowed low, body trembling. After a long pause, they took a tentative step forward. I grabbed her wrist and said, she doesn't want to. Fu Mingchuan's lips curled into a mocking smile, as if he'd just heard a joke. Do you have any idea how much she charges for a night? Time and space seemed to freeze, then warp and intertwine. In the previous life, Fu Mingchuan took the girl away. The next day, she jumped from the 30th floor wearing a bathrobe. In a news alert, a white-haired old man held a funeral portrait, choking up and unable to speak during an interview. Fu Mingchuan lay on the sofa, complaining to Jiang Yu. What are those unscrupulous media outlets writing? Saying I drove her to her death. What awful luck. Her jumping has nothing to do with me, and her family, a bunch of paupers, see their daughters dead and immediately latch on to demand money. Fine, then let's get lawyers involved. They won't see a single cent. Jiang Yu hung up the phone and reassured him. A few media outlets didn't know any better. It's been taken care of. The reports will be deleted soon. I stood to the side, my entire body cold. A human life. What does it mean in your eyes? Hearing this, Fu Mingchuan looked at me. He slowly sat up, a mocking smile on his face. Jing Yunhui, do you know how much she charges for a night? A woman who sells herself, yet she puts on this act of chaste virtue. Mingchuan, Jianyu's tone sharpened, a warning. Then, Jianyu said to me, Yunhui, it was her own choice. The person before me had a relaxed brow, even a soothing smile. As if the girl who had died had nothing whatsoever to do with them. That was the first time I caught a glimpse of the cruelty beneath Jianyu's gentle facade. What happened after that? I gave Jianyu the silent treatment, and then we made up. Jianyu apologized to me, but I knew he didn't truly believe he or Fu Mingchuan had done anything wrong. This is the chasm between us. The social class he belongs to allows him to treat people as playthings to be trampled, but I cannot. Sometimes I even wonder, if I were the one who jumped, would Jianyu just as coldly say, it was her own choice? Silence hung heavy in the air. Fu Mingchuan tugged at his tie and said, for Jianyu's sake, I won't argue with you. Jing Yunhui, stay out of this. How much? Fu Mingchuan raised an eyebrow. I'll give you the money, but she's not going with you. I said calmly, what kind of despair drives a person to jump from the 30th floor? I don't know. That's why this time, I'm going to stop the tragedy from happening. Jing Yunhui, do you think you're being noble and special? This little act you're putting on, is it saving a fallen woman? Ha, ha, so righteous? Fu Mingchuan leaned in closer, his once handsome features twisted into a malicious sneer. So, Miss Righteous Xing, what's your take on Jianyu now? The wave of alcohol breath that hit me was revolting. I grabbed the girl's hand and turned to leave without a second glance. Stop right there. Fu Mingchuan's voice suddenly rose sharply. Young Master Fu, don't get angry over a woman. A man said, pushing through the crowd to Fu Mingchuan's side to placate him. I recognized him as Duan Hengji, a friend of Su Ji. That once youthful, vibrant face was now a mask of sycophancy. So that's how it was. Su Ji was framed so easily because a brother like Duan Hengji had been bought off. Duan Hengji avoided my gaze, and a cold sneer formed in my heart. Disgusting, I murmured under my breath. Jing Yun, I didn't say you could leave. Fu Mingchuan pushed past the person beside him and took a step forward. Mingchuan, Jianyu's figure appeared at the corner of the corridor, his voice calm. You're drunk. Don't make a scene like this. I hurriedly led the girl behind me away from that place. Beneath the towering buildings, brilliant lights intertwined, and an endless stream of cars stretched to the horizon. The girl stared out the window, her tone desolate. It's so vibrant here. I sold myself to get closer to this kind of life, but it feels like this place has never truly accepted me. Her beautiful eyes turned to me, crinkling slightly at the corners. Thank you, she said. I'm going back to my hometown. It's poor and rural, but at least I'll have my dignity there. Safe travels, I replied with a smile. Back at the house in the city, Jianyu made me a cup of floral tea. He put an arm around me and said gently, Mingchuan was out of line tonight. I'll make sure he apologizes to you another day. No need, I replied. Yunhui, are you still upset? I'm not upset. I lowered my gaze. In the end, whether it's Fu Mingchuan or anyone else, they have nothing to do with me. Jiangyu, you don't need to go to such lengths. You and I only have a 3-year agreement. Jiangyu's eyes darkened. Amidst the gently rising steam, he let out a soft, wry chuckle. I couldn't decipher the meaning behind that laugh. All right. Jiangyu stood up and said to me, I'll go take a shower first. You get ready. The night seemed to stretch on a bit too long. I stared at the ceiling light, letting Jiangyu do as he pleased. In matters of intimacy, he was far from the gentle soul he appeared to be. Instead, he was all-consuming. Possessive to the point of devouring. As the lamp swayed, Jiangyu noticed my distraction and sank his teeth sharply into my shoulder. As the pain spread, I realized only those in love could find joy in such an act. In the repetitive, hollow overlap of our bodies, I heard Jiangyu's sigh fall softly by my ear. I got a text from Duan Hengji while I was at work. We met at the cafe downstairs from the office. Duan Hengji held his coffee, hesitated for a long moment, and finally said, Yunhui, could you put in a good word for me? Ask Mr. Fu to arrange a different position for me. I looked up at him. Since when do I have that kind of pull? Duan Hengji gave a mocking laugh. You're pretty tight with young Master Fu and his crew. Huh, aren't you working on an animation with Su Ji? I asked. He shook his head, his tone dismissive. How much money can you even make in animation? And that's your reason for betraying Su Ji? Duan Hingji's expression froze for a moment before relaxing again. He said slowly, my betraying him is actually for the best for everyone, isn't it? Of course, I knew the whole Suji affair was a setup, a trap Jiang Yu laid for you. I just needed to take the money and do the job. Suji trusted me. He'd sign any document I put in front of him without a second glance. It was all too easy. For money, you'd send Suji to prison without a second thought. Some friend you are, I said sarcastically. Duan Hingji's face darkened. He didn't go to jail, did he? Wasn't the condition for you being with Jiang Yu to get him to let Suji off the hook? Jing Yunhui, you should really be thanking me. If it weren't for me, how could you have latched onto Jiang Yu so quickly? On the surface, it looks like you were coerced, but who knows if you weren't secretly enjoying it. That's Jiang Yu we're talking about. I was just about to speak when a voice cut me off. Duan Hingji, you're a goddamn piece of work. Suji burst out from behind the potted plant, grabbed Duan Hingji by the collar. His eyes rimmed red. What's he doing here? I urged. Suji, let go. Don't waste your anger on someone like him. Duan Hingji methodically pried Suji's fingers open, straightened his clothes, let out a cold snort, and turned to leave. I looked at the red-eyed Suji before me and sighed. Yunhui, why did you keep this from me? After a long silence, I said, I was afraid Jiang Yu would hurt you. Yunhui, Suji said, holding my hand, I'm an adult, I can face problems on my own. You don't need to sacrifice or trade anything for my sake. You don't understand Jiang Yu. He'll stop at nothing to go after you. Suji said with firm conviction. I'm not afraid. My eyes flickered, and I found it hard to say anything more. Suji implored earnestly, I can be careful and vigilant, or simply find work in another city. Yunhui, more than going to prison, I can't bear to see you with someone you don't love, all for my sake. Yunhui, leave him, let's go somewhere else and start over. Okay. He looked vulnerable. I lowered my gaze and finally replied, I'll think about it. Over the weekend, Jiang Yu's company had an impromptu meeting, so I stayed home alone. The doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Jiang Yu's assistant standing outside. He gave a polite nod and said, Mr. Jiang left some documents in the study. I'm here to pick them up. I led him into the study and, as I helped him look for the document, I pulled open a desk drawer. In the middle, a file lay open, half of a photograph peeking out. Once the assistant had left, I picked up that file. Inside was a stack of photographs. I looked through them one by one. They were photos from my university days, all taken from a voyeuristic, hidden angle. Me in class, me studying, me eating, even me hugging and walking with Shuji. Every moment had been documented and delivered here. To Jiang Yu, he's been watching me all along. My heart sank. Jiang Yu was even more terrifying than I had imagined. I was even a bit lost in thought. If I really went through with that 3-year agreement, would he actually let me leave afterward? I put the stack of photos back where they were, then sat down by the floor-to-ceiling window until dusk settled in and the entire house was plunged into darkness. When Jiang Yu returned, he didn't turn on the lights. He groped his way over to me and sat down beside me. I caught the scent of cedarwood on him. Yunhui. He called my name. I looked at him but didn't respond. Jiang Yu said softly, It's so nice to just sit here quietly with you like this. I've made up my mind to leave. I booked a flight for Friday. Suji and I are going to City C, leaving everything here behind to start fresh. Thankfully, my parents have been traveling all year and are still away, so I don't have to explain much to them. On the eve of my departure, Jiang Yu gave me the latest creation from Codis's master perfumer. Yesterday, under his expectant gaze, I smiled and said, Thank you, I love it. That was wrong. I never liked it. It's just that in my past life, as Jiang Yu's wife, I needed to have some presentable hobbies for all those social gatherings, so I chose perfume. Clearly, Jiang Yu took it to heart. I didn't take any extra belongings. With all my documents in hand, I got into a taxi to the airport with Suji. The scenery on both sides whizzed past. Suji held my hand. His warmth was intense, and for a moment, I felt as if we were eloping. I'm sorry, I said to him. Suji pursed his lips, looking rather displeased. I hope you're apologizing for giving up on me so easily. I nodded. It won't happen again. The taxi turned onto a broad, deserted road on the outskirts of the city. Suddenly, several cars swerved out from the side, blocking us in from the front and back, forcing our vehicle to a stop. The driver opened his mouth, ready to curse, but the man who got out of the other cars spoke to him in low tones. He fell silent. Jiang Yu dragged me out of the car, his expression dark and stormy. Suji was pinned down by 2 bodyguards, unable to break free. With his mouth gagged, he could only let out muffled, MMPH sounds. What the hell is wrong with you? I asked Jianyu through gritted teeth. Jianyu's dark eyes fixed on me. Yunhui, he said, you broke your promise. What are the consequences of breaking a promise? Jianyu forcibly took me back to the villa in Wangshan, the place he had called home since childhood. A soft click sounded, my breath caught in my throat as I stared at the slender, silver chain fastened around my ankle. I shifted my foot, the chain clinking softly where it met the bedpost. The faint sound swallowed by the thick carpet covering the floor. Jianyu. This is unlawful confinement, it's illegal. Jianyu simply smiled, unfazed. I whispered, aren't you afraid I'll call the police? Yunhui, he said, reaching out to touch my cheek, his gaze tender. Both I and your friends can testify that we are in a relationship. Calling the police would be pointless, besides, you won't get the chance to call them. Jianyu locked me in his room and took away everything I could use to contact the outside world. He was gone most of the day, only the housekeeper came at set times to bring meals, as if clutching at a life-saving straw. I begged the nanny to call the police or contact my family and friends for me. The nanny lowered her head, avoiding my gaze. That night, Jianyu held me. His chin resting on the top of my head, he said with a laugh, Yunhui, no one is going to help you, trapped in a space of just a few dozen square meters, with no one but Jianyu to talk to. The days stretched on, long and monotonous. Time became a blur, and I felt completely severed from the outside world. Gradually, I even began to look forward to seeing Jianyu. That was his goal all along. Clinging to the last shreds of my sanity, I resisted, refusing food, hurling curses at Jianyu, or smashing things. Jianyu handled it all with ease, as if he had already anticipated every one of these scenarios. After barely 2 days of my hunger strike, he had someone administer a sedative, followed by an intravenous nutrient drip. Jianyu sat on the edge of the bed, watching over my utterly exhausted form. Yunhui, remember when we first met? You didn't know me then, but you smiled at me through the window. So brightly, I found it strange at the time, but later. I wished you would always smile at me like that. I ignored him. Yunhui, we were meant to be together all along. We'd been through so much. You will fall in love with me, marry me, and become my wife. Jianyu's gaze was fixed, his expression stubborn. Yunhui, you were the one who liked me first. I shook my head gently. I've changed my mind. Is that not allowed? Outside the window, the shadows of the trees swayed, their edges gradually gilded with a golden hue. Jianyu spoke more and more of the past, the previous life, this life, the boundaries between them growing indistinct. I grew increasingly silent, a result that was clearly not what Jianyu had wanted. One late night, a sudden downpour lashed against the window panes. Jianyu burst into the room reeking of alcohol and locked the door behind him. He never touched cigarettes or alcohol, yet that night, he had drunk God knows how much. Jianyu held me tightly in a crushing embrace. His voice was frantic and disjointed. Yunhui, why has everything changed? Even with a second chance. Yunhui, I don't want children anymore, and I won't pressure you. You can do anything you want, just be yourself. Whatever you do is fine. Do you remember saying you loved me, that you would never leave me? In this lifetime, I have never said that. He asked me so pitifully, as if I had done something to wrong him. I patted his back and soothed. Jianyu, calm down. Why are you drifting further and further away from me? It was rare for Jianyu to lose his composure. He was lost in the illusion of the past, unwilling to break free. I coaxed him, saying, no, I'm right here with you. He leaned over me, and the restraint around my ankle suddenly pulled taut. A sharp cry escaped my lips from the pain. Jianyu panicked, immediately checking to see if I was hurt. Jianyu, I said, softening my tone. Please take it off, I won't leave. He nodded. Fumbling for the key, his fingers trembling, the sudden feeling of freedom on my feet was utterly foreign. I glanced at Jianyu, took a few steps back, then pushed open the window and jumped without hesitation. Yunhui, he rushed to the window, his voice cutting through the clamorous, rainy night. I pushed myself up from the grass and limped toward the door. What a sorry sight I was, but I refused to be kept like this any longer. Jianyu caught up with me quickly. Rainwater streamed down his hair as he casually took off his glasses and tossed them aside. I looked at him warily. Jianyu came to his senses. He gave a slight, wry smile. Yunhui, I'll take you to the hospital. The rain fell harder. Jianyu gripped the steering wheel, his gaze fixed intently ahead. The car sped up, and I huddled in the passenger seat, silent. Yunhui, if Suji had never come along, would you have loved me? he asked, turning his head toward me. I had no time to answer. A blinding white light shot through the window, a horn blared, and a truck barreled straight for us. Jianyu yanked the steering wheel hard to the right. A deafening crash followed as the truck's front end smashed into the driver's side. The immense impact knocked me unconscious. After the accident, Jianyu was critically injured and admitted to the ICU. I used the hospital phone to call Suji, then walked away without a backward glance. The truth is, I did love him once. I loved the gentle illusion he presented, but that love faded, and Jianyu revealed his true, domineering and extreme nature. It was a mistake from the very beginning, yet it took years of my life to prove it. The news reported that the Jiang family heir was discharged from the hospital after recovering from his injuries. I was on edge for a long time, afraid Jianyu wouldn't let go, but in the end, the person who showed up was Fu Mingchuan. He brought news. Jianyu has lost his memory, he's forgotten everyone. Fu Mingchuan smiled and said, "Congratulations, one less headache for you." I looked at him with suspicion, doubting he could be that kind-hearted. He narrowed his eyes. "Let me tell you a story. A long time ago, Jianyu had a dog. He treated that dog incredibly well, fed it imported dog food, played with it using all sorts of toys. The dog was only close to him. Back then, I was an idiot. I insisted on teasing that dog, trying to win it over to see if it would come with me. I succeeded. The dog would wag its tail when it saw me, even wanted to follow me home." Fu Mingchuan continued. "Later, Jianyu poisoned that dog to death." I frowned. Why? Jianyu is the kind of person who seems indifferent to everything, but once he claims something as his own, he'll never let go. If that thing slips from his control, he'd rather destroy it than let anyone else have it. Are you comparing me to a dog? I looked up at him. Fu Mingchuan spread his hands. "You provoked him, so you've got no one to blame but yourself. I was actually looking forward to seeing you and Jianyu go at it, but in the end, things turned so ugly. Well, it's for the best that you're separating now. It's better for everyone." Xing Yunhui, don't show your face in front of him again. I never saw Jianyu again. Only when I came across news about him would I feel a brief, distant pang. Years later, I attended the premiere of director Suji's latest animated film with him. Amidst the shifting crowd, a young man in a black suit sat in the front row, his profile gentle and hauntingly familiar. Suji shot him a wary glance. I gave Suji's hand a reassuring squeeze and smiled, signaling for him to relax. From across the vast distance, Jianyu's gaze swept over us, lingered for a moment, and then moved on. It was the look one gives a stranger. The big screen went dark, then lit up again. "This film is dedicated to my wife." Amidst a ripple of good-natured laughter, Suji winked at me, surprised. I smiled, pressing my lips together. "In this lifetime, time and the years will prove that my love for Suji will endure forever." Story 2. After top-charting singer Jiang Pei left the demo of his last song, he died from an overdose of medication. A few days later, I received the full-length version of this song in my email. It was the song he hummed to me in high school. At the very end, there was a sentence spoken with a sobbing voice. "I miss you." Time rewound 10 years. The young man sat on the steps with a guitar in his arms and looked at me. Finally, I mustered up the courage to say those words. "I like you." A few days after Jiang Pei's death, a lot of things were dug up. For example, his biological father had been leeching off him for years. For example, he had severe mental illness, even to the point of experiencing auditory and visual hallucinations. And for another example, he hadn't been doing well at all these years. On the surface, he was a dazzling star in the glorious world. In fact, he had always been trapped in a bottomless abyss, struggling alone. I took several days off and stayed at home all the time. I dug out the high school graduation photo. Jiang Pei stood on the far side, with a cold expression. I didn't go to school that day, and my image in the group photo was photoshopped in, right next to Jiang Pei. I stared at the only photo of us and stood there in a daze. Suddenly, my phone made a sound. I picked it up, but the moment I saw the sender, I froze. It was an email from Jiang Pei, but the next second I realized that it was a scheduled send. It arrived exactly at 12 noon, my hands shaking. I clicked on the file he sent. The moment the music started, I recognized it. This was the last demo he left behind, because he had hummed this song to me in high school. But the version he sent me was the full-length one. 3 minutes passed quickly. When the last guitar note faded away, I was crying so hard that I could barely breathe. But the next second, Jiang Pei's voice sounded again. "Wan Yuan." He called my name, and his voice was filled with a strong sobbing tone. "I miss you." I looked at myself in the mirror and stood there in a daze for 2 minutes. You'll be late if you don't go to school now, my mother called from the kitchen. I glanced at the books scattered on the table, Senior 3, then I looked up at the calendar, August 28th, the day I first met Jianpei. After realizing what had happened, I grabbed my school bag and rushed downstairs. By the time I ran to school, my back was soaked with sweat, but I didn't care at all. When I rushed into the classroom, the homeroom teacher was already there. Next to him was Jianpei. He was wearing the most ordinary white t-shirt, and the cuffs were a bit wrinkled from washing, yet his casual glance was still incredibly handsome. The moment our eyes met, the noisy classroom seemed to quiet down for a moment, but in just a few seconds, he looked away. The classmates below the podium were chatting noisily, not bothering to lower their voices at all. Damn, he's so good looking. Who do you think Oldley will make sit next to him? Probably a guy. Just a few seconds after these words were spoken, before I could even sit back in my seat, Oldley spoke. Sit there. He pointed to the empty seat next to me. I paused as I was putting down my bag, but I felt relieved inside. Phew, things were developing as they did before. The class fell silent for a moment, and most of the classmates looked in my direction. Then they exclaimed, "He will definitely study hard now." I stood there, stunned, until Jianpei carried his bag, walked over to me, and sat down. He didn't look at me once during the whole process, just as aloof and unapproachable as before, but I was no longer the timid 18-year-old girl, especially since I knew that the 28-year-old Jianpei still had feelings for me. So, while Oldley was speaking, I gently poked Jianpei's arm. He turned to look at me, his expression so cold that it seemed to freeze people. Why is he so fierce? No wonder we only had our first conversation after sitting at the same table for half a month. This time, I mustered up the courage to speak first. My name is Yuan. Oh no, I forgot that I used to be a stutterer. I froze in place, lowered my head, and didn't dare to look at Jianpei again. So embarrassing. He must think I'm some kind of weirdo. Just as I was so embarrassed that I felt like digging a Barbie dream mansion with my toes, I suddenly heard a low mm in my ear. I looked up, and Jianpei's face was no longer as cold as before. In fact, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Jianpei, after reporting his name, he turned his head back, and the slight curve at the corner of his mouth disappeared again. I felt a sense of loss, but the next second, his voice reached my ears again. I know your name is Yuan. I looked at the physics test paper in front of me, frowning deeply. Are high school physics problems this easy? Out of the corner of my eye, several girls were gathered around Jianpei's desk. Even though Jianpei didn't respond at all, they kept talking on their own. My heart sank. What's the use of being able to do physics if I can't even communicate with him normally? I was sighing silently when the physics teacher entered the classroom. He walked straight up to me. The girls around Jianpei's desk scattered in a hurry, leaving Jianpei with his head down, writing something. I took a peek. It seemed to be sheet music. Oh, no wonder he's going to be a top-notch musician in the future. He's already writing songs now. Yuan, help your classmates when you have time. I looked up at the physics teacher. From what I remembered, he was the teacher who cared the most about his students. Maybe because he was an old man, he didn't mince his words. For example, the person next to you, since you got a full score, you can teach the classmates whose scores are still in the single digits when you have time. Jianpei was still writing, as if this had nothing to do with him, especially your desk mate. Jianpei looked up at me. I remembered, this had happened before, but in the past, we just pretended that teaching had been done after being scolded by the teacher. After all, I was a shy and introverted girl back then, and with Jianpei's cold face, who would dare? But this time, I looked at the old man and nodded firmly. Okay. I looked at Jianpei's test paper, which was full of red crosses, and was stunned, but the person beside me seemed not to care at all. He twirled his pen, as if waiting for me to speak. I said with difficulty, "It's okay." Then I grabbed a pen and started writing down the solutions one by one. After all, it would be faster for me to get a new head than to explain these problems verbally now. It was the evening break, and there weren't many people in the class. I originally thought Jianpei would have turned away to do his own things long ago, but when I looked up after finishing writing, he was still staring at me. There was no emotion in his eyes. I didn't know if he was looking at the test paper, the pen, or me, or maybe he was looking at me, but thinking like that was too narcissistic. Jianpei had always been indifferent, as if he had no emotions. If it weren't for that email, I probably would never have known that I had a place in his heart. All done. After I handed the test paper back to him, I immediately turned around and pretended to do my homework. But just a few minutes later, Jianpei moved the test paper back to me. I looked at him. I still don't understand this one. He pointed to a problem. Explain it to me. I stood there, stunned. Explain. Is that not okay? Okay. I took a deep breath, trying to make my words flow smoothly. But it still didn't go well. Gravity and friction. What was I talking about? Take it slow. I turned to look at the person who spoke. Jianpei smiled. Although it wasn't obvious, his lips indeed curved into a beautiful arc. Even his eyes were filled with a bit of twinkling light. The ceiling fan creaked as it turned. I suddenly remembered that a long time ago, Jianpei had also said this to me. Go ahead, it's okay to speak slowly. He was the first person other than my parents who was willing to listen to me until I finished speaking. He was also the first person to encourage me to talk more. Dong dong dong. So useless. It seemed that I had become the one who fell in love first again. This time, the relationship between Jianpei and me seemed to progress rapidly. I sat in my seat, staring straight at Jianpei. There were still a lot of people standing next to his seat, although he hardly ever replied to them. Looking at myself, I was just an unremarkable student in the class. Sometimes I would be in a trance, wondering what I, so insignificant, could do to prevent his death 10 years later. This wasn't about redemption. I just wanted to pull him out of that hellish life, let him enjoy the sunshine on earth to the fullest. During the lunch break, Jianpei took the initiative to ask me, why were you staring at me after class? His tone wasn't cold, and he even initiated the conversation, which was a big step forward. I told him the truth. Because you're good looking. It was the first time I saw Jianpei blush. After I said this, he was first stunned for a moment, then turned his head away. A suspicious red flush appeared on his face, even reaching the tips of his ears. What's he doing? It's not like no one has ever complimented him on his looks. The girls in the class talk about how incredibly handsome he is all day long. Why didn't I see him blush then? After the bell rang, it was a half-hour nap time. I lay on the desk, but I couldn't fall asleep no matter what, so I simply opened my eyes and started looking at Jianpei intently. He had his eyes closed, and his face was facing me. I was so close that I could see each of his eyelashes clearly. Alas, how could someone be so good-looking? I was still thinking about this when Jianpei suddenly opened his eyes. The next second, my eyes were covered by a hand. I heard Jianpei's soft but gritted teeth voice in my ear, "Stop looking." His voice was hoarse, and his palm was burning hot. It seemed that he was also moved. The first monthly exam was preceded by our last sports meeting. I stood under the shade of a tree, staring blankly as Jianpei ran the 3,000-meter race. I held a bottle of water that I had just bought in my hand, and it seemed to have warmed up from being held. The classmates in the class were all gathered at the front, cheering. I took a deep breath, but what came out was, come on, oh well, I give up. Jianpei was running in the lead. Every time he passed a class, there would be a burst of cheers. Oh, a future superstar. The water bottle in my hand now seemed annoying, especially when I glanced at the finish line. Several girls were already waiting there with water in their hands. They're all so beautiful. I felt inferior. I was still in a daze when the crowd suddenly erupted into cheers. I looked up and saw that Jianpei had 200 meters left and was starting his final sprint. The 18-year-old boy was like a white dove. It seemed that with just a flap of his wings, he could soar high, fly. Jianpei, don't fall this time. Jianpei crossed the finish line amidst the screams of his classmates. In the blink of an eye, he was surrounded by the crowd. I stood there, completely giving up the idea of giving him the water. I couldn't even speak properly, let alone give him water. Just as I turned back to my seat, a classmate in the front row suddenly called out to me. "Wang Yuan, it seems like Jianpei is looking for you." I squeezed to the front, half believing. As soon as I arrived, I saw Jianpei looking in my direction. Then, the moment he saw me, he waved at me, motioning for me to come over. Everyone around him looked at me. I subconsciously swallowed, and with stiff hands and feet, I walked step by step towards him. Water. He held out his hand to me. I didn't react at first, and my hand subconsciously tightened around the bottle. Jianpei frowned slightly, then suddenly leaned down and whispered in my ear, "Consider it as me buying it." Then he took the water from my hand. The people around us exclaimed, and then started chatting noisily. Are Jianpei and Wang Yuan on such good terms? I don't think so. They don't talk much, but Wan Yuan has been explaining physics problems to Jianpei recently. He does need some tutoring in physics. My face started to feel hot, fortunately. The teacher shouted from the side, the students who won awards in the 3,000-meter race, come to the podium to receive your awards quickly. Before Jianpei left, he looked at me, and it seemed like he said something, wait for me, that seemed to be what his lips said, I'm done for. I'm completely under his spell. After the sports meeting, there was a rare holiday for senior 3 students, however. It was just our turn to do the cleaning this week. So Jianpei and I had to stay a little longer. After all the classmates in the class left, I picked up a broom. When I turned around, I bumped right into Jianpei, who was going to clean the blackboard. Sorry, I couldn't speak clearly at all. What are you sorry for? Jianpei looked at me, looking into his eyes. I held my breath for a moment, and then my mood suddenly calmed down. I didn't talk enough to you. I didn't talk to you enough, obviously. This sentence didn't make any sense to Jianpei at the moment, but he just lowered his eyes. When he looked up again, there was a hint of a smile in his eyes. Just talk more in the future. Why did you take my water? I asked sincerely. Jianpei's hand, which was cleaning the blackboard, paused, and he didn't turn around. I thought it was for me. Why? I saw you holding it and looking in my direction when I was running. My eyelids twitched, and I blurted out, you saw me. This time, Jianpei finally turned around and stared straight at me. Yeah, I saw you. I saw you at a glance. When I went home, my face was still burning hot. I wore the gold medal Jianpei gave me around my neck, although it wasn't heavy. It was very noticeable. Is a bottle of water enough in return? He looked into my eyes. Thanks. Now I really can't say a single word. Why didn't I realize before that he was so charming? When I got home, my father was also there. When he saw the gold medal around my neck, he was taken aback for a moment but didn't say anything. However, during dinner, my mother suddenly asked me, Yuan, how's school going recently? I said without batting an eyelid, it's going well. I heard from your teacher that you've been helping your classmates with their studies recently. My father interjected, what's going on? Have you suddenly become brave? My hand, which was picking up food, paused. From what my father said, he must have called the teacher to ask, which was why he knew so much. Helping classmates. I looked at my father with no expression. The dining table suddenly fell into an awkward silence. Is that so? That's good. My father smiled and even picked up a piece of meat for me. It's good to help classmates, but don't let it affect your own grades. Yuan, you're already in senior 3, the monthly exam is next week, right? I suddenly remembered something. For example, why wasn't I at school when we took the graduation photo? At that time, rumors spread about Jianpei's family background, saying that he was the son of a mistress, and his father refused to acknowledge him. Then Jianpei got into a fierce fight with the person who spread the rumors. I was there, watching Jianpei throw punches with red-rimmed eyes. After that, they were asked to bring their parents to school, and my father came too. As we walked out of the office, my father said to me, Yuan, let's review at home for the next half month. Why? Your father is afraid you won't be able to focus. Just as he finished speaking, Jianpei walked out of the office and heard those words clearly. Jianpei's eyes seemed to turn red then, but it was so long ago that I'd completely forgotten about it. I put down my bowl, and the chopsticks hit the edge of the bowl with a bang. I will do well in the exam. After saying that, I picked up the bowl and left the dining table. At a little past 8 in the evening, my mother came into my room. Yuan, are you angry? No. I looked up at her. My mother said earnestly, your father called the teacher because he was afraid you'd be bullied at school, but I was clearly very happy today. I replied word by word. My mother was taken aback and said illogically, but after all, you stutter. Mom, I interrupted her for the first time. Have you ever thought that my stutter could be cured? My mother was stunned by my question. However, my stutter was completely cured in the second year after I graduated from high school, all because of Jianpei. That summer, Jianpei participated in a talent show. With his original song, he became an overnight sensation on the internet. At the end of the final, holding the gold trophy in one hand and the microphone in the other, he looked straight into the camera and said, I hope everyone can proudly mention me to their friends in the future. I also hope that person can see this. After saying this, the host immediately picked up on the clue. Who is this person? Jianpei paused and then smiled. My grandfather. sitting in front of the TV, looking at the shining young man on the screen. I cried for no apparent reason. From then on, I started practicing speaking desperately. I practiced by listening to cross-talk, by listening to Junpei's songs, and even by mumbling to myself while taking a shower. I'm not sure why. Maybe it was because of what Junpei said, or perhaps, I still wanted to have some connection with Junpei, even if I was just one of his small fans. Finally, half a year later, I was no longer a stutterer. Everyone around me also knew that I was a fan of Junpei. During the holidays, I went to the capital to watch one of his concerts. I got a seat at the very back, and I could barely see him clearly, sitting there, with his singing and the cheers of the fans in my ears. He was so dazzling on the big screen that those high school memories seemed like a beautiful dream. It was also on that day that I truly realized the gap between us. He was the moon hanging in the sky, while I was just an ordinary speck of dust. That's fine, it's not so bad. No, it's not fine at all. I don't want Junpei to die. Looking at my mother, I spoke in a tone more forceful than ever. Mom, I know what I'm doing. I'm already 18 years old. My mother looked at me without saying a word. When she left, she just said, "The monthly exam is next week. Review well." Looking at the Chinese textbook in my hand, for the first time, I was glad that I was at least somewhat intelligent. In my previous life, I graduated from university, got a master's degree, and then a doctorate. I spent my days focusing on physics research at the institute. High school knowledge was a piece of cake for me. I just needed to memorize more for Chinese. However, I looked up at the door of my room. I had never gone against my parents' wishes before. In my previous life, I did whatever they hoped I would do. Just now was the first time I had ever refuted them. Come to think of it, my persistent stutter was somewhat related to my parents. When I was a child, some classmates often made fun of my stutter. To protect me, my parents asked the teacher to move me to a seat next to the podium. No one dared to speak ill of me in front of me anymore, but at the same time, no one talked to me either. As I got older, they seemed to have a conditioned response. Before the start of each semester, they would go to the teacher and ask not to assign me a deskmate, fearing that I would be bullied. It wasn't until high school that they eased up a bit, but by then, I had already become withdrawn, and no one wanted to sit with me. They put a protective shield around me, but at the same time, they blocked my communication with the outside world. But this time, I'd rather not be the obedient girl. I want to do what I think is right. The day I went back to school, my father drove me there. When we arrived at the school gate, just as I was about to get out of the car, my father stopped me. "Wait, I need to talk to your teacher." My hand stopped mid-movement, and anger suddenly welled up inside me. I didn't even know why I was so angry. This wasn't like my usual personality at all. Suppressing my anger, I asked, "Why do you need to talk to the teacher?" "To ask about your situation." My father got out of the car without looking at me. I followed him. On the way to the teaching building, the atmosphere was extremely tense, and neither of us said a word. When we reached the office door, my father turned to me and said, "Why don't you go to the classroom? I also want to know about my situation." I looked at him, trying my best to appear calm. Silence. My father opened the door, and Mr. Lee was there. When he saw my father and me, he stood up from his seat. "Won Yuan's father. What can I do for you?" My father glanced at me, as if hinting at something, and said, "I came to ask about Won Yuan's recent situation." Huh, Mr. Lee was confused. "Won Yuan has a new deskmate, and she's not very good at socializing, so I came to ask about it." Mr. Lee looked at me and then at my father, as if he understood something. "Yes, since Won Yuan didn't have a deskmate, I let the new student sit next to her. But isn't it inappropriate for a boy and a girl to sit together?" My father finally revealed his true intention. He was here to change my deskmate for me, or maybe he wanted me to go back to sitting alone. Their conversation was a bit loud, and the old teacher also looked up and chimed in. "I think it's a good thing that Won Yuan and Jianpei sit together. Won Yuan can even help Jianpei with his physics, but won't this affect her studies?" My father sneered. "I heard that her new deskmate is an art student. His grades probably aren't very good." "Right, he has the Path of Art exams, but Won Yuan can only rely on the college entrance examination." Stop, I couldn't hold back my anger anymore and interrupted my father. The office fell silent. "Whether it will have an impact or not," I said through gritted teeth, determined not to stutter as I used to, "we'll know when the exam results come out." After saying this, ignoring their reactions, I walked straight towards the door. The moment the door opened, The person standing in the corridor looked at me. It was Jian Pei. I didn't know how long he had been standing there, nor how much of the conversation in the office he had heard. He just stood there quietly, looking at me. His expression was more indifferent than I had ever seen. My eyelids twitched. Just as I was about to explain, Jian Pei turned and walked towards the classroom. He didn't say a word. Jian Pei. I chased after him. Do you want to change seats? The corners of his mouth turned up, but he didn't look at me. He exuded an icy aura. Should I be timid again? A voice in my heart asked. No. I stopped, looking at his back, and shouted as loudly as I could. Jian Pei also stopped. I don't want to change, I repeated, my heart pounding with excitement, as if it would shatter my rationality, but I didn't come back here to be a coward, this time. Jian Pei finally turned around and looked at me. What he said next shocked me. His eyes seemed to turn red again, and his voice trembled. Wan Yuan, he called my name. You weren't like this before. Why did I go back 10 years in time, after studying physics for so many years? For the first time, I was willing to believe in ghosts and gods. Maybe the gods in the sky also thought Jian Pei was a pity, so they chose me, the lucky one, to help him, but it seemed I was completely wrong. It turned out, Jian Pei wasn't the same Jian Pei as before either. During self-study, Mr. Li called me out. Wan Yuan, I've talked with your father. We'll decide whether to change your seat or not after the monthly exam results come out. The teacher also thinks that unless your grades are really affected, changing seats now would be like smearing mud on Jian Pei. Mr. Li spoke softly and patted me on the shoulder. Personally, I think you were very brave today. The moment I heard these words, tears welled up and streamed down my face. I sniffed hard, but I couldn't stop the tears. Mr. Li was startled. Don't cry. There's nothing to cry about. I wiped the tears from my face and forced a smile. It's okay. The important thing was that I didn't stand by and watch Jian Pei's tragedy unfold again. The moment I sat back in my seat, the person beside me asked softly, "Are you going to change seats?" His tone was flat, and there was no expression on his face, as if he was refusing to show his true emotions. But what about his hand that was gripping the pen tightly? The 18-year-old Jian Pei wasn't this contradictory. No, I replied. Jian Pei paused but didn't say anything, just nodded. Do you want to change? I wrote these words on a piece of paper and slid it towards Jian Pei. 2 minutes later, the paper was slid back. There were 2 lines of words, but the first line was crossed out and blackened. Only the outline could be vaguely seen. Either way is fine. The second line said, no. I turned to look at him. He was writing something with a pen. When he noticed my gaze, he looked up at me. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the sheet music he was writing. The handwriting on the paper was bold and unrestrained, nothing like the style of an 18-year-old. If you don't want to, then we won't change. This time, I'll be the brave one. The first monthly exam lasted 2 days. With the tight schedule in Senior 3, the teachers graded the papers as quickly as they could. When the results came out, Mr. Li gasped in surprise. I ranked 4th in the whole school. I hardly lost any points in math, physics, and chemistry, but in Chinese, I only got a little over 100 points. Although my grades were good before, I usually only ranked around 30th in the school. When I showed the report card to my parents, for the first time, they didn't say anything, especially my father. He stared at the report card for a long time, and finally squeezed out 2 words through his teeth. As you wish. Another piece of news, which might not be bad, was that Jian Pei ranked last in the class. That seemed reasonable. Just as I was wondering if he could get into university in this life, Jian Pei's math test paper was handed out. His score was in the 20s, starting with a 2. It was a glaring red mark, but in an instant, Jian Pei stuffed the paper into his drawer, then turned his gaze to me. Is there something? His tone was so calm as if the paper didn't belong to him. I frowned, about to say something when a voice came from the classroom door. Wan Yuan, someone is looking for you. Jian Pei and I both looked up in that direction. Fu Qing stood at the door of my classroom, holding some books. Jian Pei seemed to mutter something softly, but I had already stood up and quickly ran towards Fu Qing. As soon as I reached the door, I couldn't wait to stretch out my hand. Fu Qing was the son of my mother's best friend, and we grew up together. When we got older, we even worked in the same city. We were each other's best friends. I was so excited when I was reborn that I forgot I could ask him for help. Why did you suddenly ask me for books on psychology? Fu Qing put the books in my hand and looked straight into my eyes. It felt like he could see through all my thoughts. No wonder he would become a top-notch psychologist in the future. He already seemed to be able to read people's minds. I want to cure my stutter, I said without batting an eyelid. Actually, it was for Jianpei. If Jianpei was also reborn, then he probably still had psychological problems. After thinking about it for a few days, I decided not to let Jianpei know that I was reborn for now. After all, as an 18-year-old, he didn't know about all his painful experiences in the future, and it might stimulate him. Let things take their natural course, I would tell him eventually, but I needed to wait for the right moment. Upon hearing this, Fuqing adjusted his glasses. Then you could just come to me directly. Then his gaze shifted behind me. Excuse me. The next second, a cold voice came from behind me, as if it could freeze people. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Jianpei standing behind me, looking rather unhappy. Before I could say anything, Fuqing grabbed my arm and pulled me towards him. Your father told me to keep an eye on you, and to take you home during the holidays. After these two sentences, Jianpei's expression seemed to turn even colder, and Fuqing just had to add fuel to the fire. Classmate, I've made way for you, why don't you go? Seeing that the atmosphere was getting more and more awkward, I grabbed Jianpei's sleeve. Before his face could turn any darker, I said, class is about to start, everyone, go back to your seats. I couldn't believe it, I could barely speak a complete sentence, and yet I had to play peacemaker. On the way back to our seats, Jianpei looked uncharacteristically awkward. His eyes were fixed on the hand where I had grabbed his sleeve. I suddenly realized and let go. Jianpei's eyes darkened slightly. Are you on good terms with him? He asked casually. Yeah, we are, I said on purpose. Rip, someone tore a strip in the just distributed test paper. I couldn't help but laugh. I regard him as my brother. Jianpei looked at me and said in a tone that seemed to say, what does that have to do with me? Oh, that's nice. However, the corners of his mouth had already curled up. Then he pulled out the test paper that he had stuffed into the desk drawer and spread it out on the table. He got 28 points on a 150-point test paper. Fortunately, he was an art student. I took a quick look and then looked away, but I don't know what was going through someone's mind, and he moved the test paper closer to me. I looked at him. Jianpei didn't look the least bit guilty. I think I also need someone to teach me math. As if afraid that I would refuse, he added, I've made progress in physics. How many points? 39. Oh, he might as well not have said that. During the National Day holiday, my parents took me to a temple. They burned incense and prayed to the Buddha, hoping that my grades would remain good and that I could get into a good university in the future. I knelt in front of the goddess of mercy, only praying for the safety of the people around me, especially Jianpei. I didn't expect that when we were about to leave, the abbot of the temple stopped me. The nearly 70-year-old man looked at me, and there seemed to be some complex emotions in his clear eyes. Little benefactor, did you come from a faraway place? A faraway place? No. It only took half an hour to drive here. No. I suddenly realized what the abbot meant. He probably saw that I didn't belong here. Yes, I nodded. The abbot nodded slightly and looked at the Buddha statue in front of us. The weather was fine, and the sunlight shone in, scattering and reflecting. It looked as if the Buddha statue was really shining. For the people around you, yes. After a few seconds of silence, the old man took out a talisman from his pocket and handed it to me. Take it. Little benefactor, in everything in the world, when there is gain, there is loss. Each life has its own hardships, gain and loss, hardships. On the way back, I sat in the back seat of the car, staring at the talisman in my hand in a trance. Each life has its own hardships. Then what was my hardship in this life? It wasn't my hardship, it was Jianpei's. After the National Day holiday, Jianpei didn't come back to school. The person who should have been sitting next to me didn't show up all day. When handing in homework in the evening, I asked Mr. Li, why didn't Jianpei come? Mr. Li didn't think much of it and sighed. His grandfather fell a few days ago. He doesn't have any other relatives at home, so he's been taking care of his grandfather in the hospital these days. Sigh. This kid has had a tough life. I heard that his grandfather is his only relative. I didn't listen to the rest of his words. The moment I walked out of the office, I felt more powerless than ever before. Why? Why did he have to bear all the hardships? Didn't the gods in the sky even have a little bit of pity for him? After the lights went out at school, I stood in front of the school wall. I stepped on the garbage piled up in the corner to climb onto the wall. Then, closing my eyes, I jumped down. I didn't stand firm when I landed, and my ankle twisted. A sharp pain shot through me instantly. Hopping on one foot, I didn't delay for a second. After getting on the night shift bus, I finally had time to stretch my ankle. Looking at the city lights shining, I was in a trance for a moment. With the psychological age of 28, I actually did something like sneaking out of school over the wall at night. When I arrived at the hospital, I went to the inpatient department. Before I had searched for a few minutes, Jianpei just came out of the ward and walked straight to the payment window. I hid around the corner. I wanted to go out, but I couldn't come up with a reason to explain why I was there. Not many lights were on in the corridor. The dim light made Jianpei look even thinner. Before long, Jianpei finished paying and turned to go back, but when he passed the reception desk, he stopped. After a moment of silence, he borrowed a phone from the nurse. He stood there for a long time, making call after call, but no one answered. I don't know how many times he dialed the number, but finally, the other side picked up. Hello. The person's voice was so loud that I could even hear the impatience in his tone. Jianpei stood in the light, his expression calm. Can you lend me some money? As soon as he said this, the person on the other end exploded. Jianpei, you don't even have my last name, why should I give you money? Calling so many times in the middle of the night, are you crazy? Jianpei's expression didn't change. I said I'm borrowing. I'll pay you back in the future. Pay back. You're a waste of money yourself, how can I expect you to pay me back? The insults from the other side became more and more unpleasant, but Jianpei just listened quietly. When the other person stopped cursing, he asked, so, this is what you really think? Yes, After getting the confirmation, Jianpei hung up the phone without hesitation. He stood there like the only tree on a desolate plain. I couldn't hold back anymore and walked out. Jianpei, the young man immediately looked in my direction. Surprisingly, he didn't look surprised. He didn't even ask me why I was there at that time. He just froze for a moment, then nodded and forced a bitter smile. We meet again. Then he walked to the seat in the hall and sat down on his own. I quickly followed and sat down beside him. Jianpei didn't look at me. He just kept muttering to himself. I thought I wouldn't see you again this time. Anyway, I just went back 10 years in time. It's not like I was truly reborn. I'm starting to wonder if the one you on at school is also a figment of my imagination. She wasn't like this before. By the end, Jianpei's voice was so low that it was almost inaudible. I bit my lower lip hard to keep the tears from falling. So that's how it was. His previous auditory and visual hallucinations were all related to me. The young man in front of me had a dull expression, his eyes were cloudy, and there was no clarity in them. Jianpei, I reached out to him. This time, I'm not fake. Jianpei suddenly turned to look at me, his gaze fixed on my palm, but he didn't reach out to me. I can't touch it, he muttered softly. I've never been able to touch it. The next second, I directly grabbed his arm. Ignoring his stunned expression, I placed his hand on mine and held it tightly. Jianpei, this time, I'm not fake. Time seemed to stand still at that moment. It was so quiet around us that I could clearly hear Jianpei's increasingly rapid breathing. Wan Yuan, he called me. His tone was exactly the same as in that email. I'm here. I don't know how long it took, but the person beside me gradually regained clarity in his eyes. However, his gaze was still fixed on my hand holding his tightly. I'm real, I repeated. It's real, Jianpei murmured, then turned his gaze to me. But it's not real either. You're not the 18-year-old Wan Yuan, he said it firmly. I was stunned for a moment, then took a deep breath. Yes, I'm not. We both came from 10 years later. Did I die? After a long silence, Jianpei asked me. In that world, yes. Did you listen to the email I sent you? Yes. Jianpei seemed to understand. He stood up and tried to pull his hand away, but I held on tightly, and he couldn't pull it out. It's late, you should go back. He seemed to be chasing me away. No, Wan Yuan. He held my arm with his other hand and tried to push me away, as if he wanted to break free from my grip. Don't pity me. The corners of his eyes turned red, and it seemed that he was about to cry at any moment. I was going crazy. It wasn't pity. Not compassion. I'm not pitying you. I'm here because my feelings are the same as yours. It was because we had the same feelings. It was because I liked him too. People shouldn't be too straightforward, otherwise, when they calm down, they'll blush furiously and be too embarrassed to say a word. Jianpei and I sat there, not daring to look at each other. After about 10 minutes, Jianpei asked me, did you skip school to come here? If he doesn't know how to chat, he doesn't have to talk. Yeah, I replied sullenly. Actually, I'm fine. I'm not a child anymore. As he spoke, he probably realized how ridiculous it sounded, and his voice grew softer and softer. I don't believe it, I said bluntly. There was another moment of silence. I'm really much better. That was the first time since I came back that the first time what? The first time, I couldn't control my emotions. I frowned. There's no need to control them. What's there to control? Laugh when you want to laugh, cry when you want to cry. And if you want to smash this damn world, then smash it. Jianpei was stunned. You're so different from before. You're different too. I stared at him. It was already late at night. Only one light was on in the corridor, like a moon. I changed the subject. How's your grandfather? He's okay. He just needs to be observed for a while longer. Aren't you going to sleep later? It's okay. I'm not sleepy, but as we were talking, his head suddenly leaned on my shoulder. He was sound asleep and wouldn't wake up no matter how much I called him. After it completely quieted down, my hand involuntarily reached out and touched Jiangpei's head. His hair was quite soft, and a bit greasy, but the corners of my mouth curved up involuntarily. I wasn't afraid anymore. If there were any more hardships, we could bear them together. If necessary, we could be the ones who go against the wind. Jiangpei slept until almost dawn, and I had to shake him awake. I had to catch the early morning bus back to school. After reminding him several times not to bear things alone if anything happened, I turned to leave. Wan Yuan, Jianpei called out to me. I turned around and looked at him. The morning light shone on Jianpei, and I thought I saw his eyes shining brightly. Will you come again later? Yes, as long as he was there, I would come. The school has 1 day off a week. Actually, it's not a full day at all. School ends at 3 p.m. And we have to be back at school before 9 a.m. the next day. As soon as Mr. Lee announced the end of class, I grabbed my bag and rushed out of the classroom, planning to go to the hospital to see Jianpei and his grandfather. As soon as I reached the door, I ran into Fu Qing, who had said he would take me home. He looked at me for a few seconds, as if he could read my mind. Where are you going? Nowhere. Fu Qing stared into my eyes, and the next sentence sent a chill down my spine. You skipped school on Monday night, didn't you? Huh. I pretended not to understand. On Monday, I happened to be on patrol after the lights went out. The young man in front of me had an unchanged expression. I saw. Before he could finish, I covered his mouth. Then I lowered my head to confess and humbly begged for mercy. Don't tell anyone. I really had something very important to do that day. Fu Chang's gaze shifted to my hand. And then he nodded, but as soon as I let go, I heard him say, so you really did skip school. I'm not on the patrol team, Fu Qing analyzed calmly. I just happened to see you sneaking in from outside the school gate on Tuesday morning. I just tested you earlier, but my words just now had clearly confirmed his guess. Where were you planning to go? The hospital. To see who? Jianpei. Fu Qing didn't respond immediately. After a long silence, he stepped aside to make way for me. You can go, but I'm coming with you. In the ward, I met Jianpei's grandfather for the first time. The old man was kind-looking, completely different from Jianpei's personality. Fu Qing waited for me at the door of the ward and didn't come in. I handed the organized review materials to Jianpei, taking advantage of his grandfather's presence. I hinted at his studies. It's senior 3, study hard, otherwise, he wouldn't be able to get into university in this life. Jianpei clearly understood the meaning behind my words. His hand froze as he took the books. Grandfather happily echoed me from the side. Yes, listen to your little deskmate and study hard. As he spoke, he grabbed me and told me a lot of stories about Jianpei's childhood. For example, when he was a child, he was so delicate looking that the girls in kindergarten insisted on playing house with him and made him be the mother. Another example was that when he was a child, he was too playful to do his homework. After being scolded, he ran away from home, but his grandfather didn't even notice he was gone. In the end, he came back home crying with a head full of mosquito bites. Jianpei couldn't stand it anymore and walked out of the ward. After Jianpei closed the door of the ward, the smile on grandfather's face faded a bit. Wan Yuan, grandfather held my hand and sighed. Jianpei's mother passed away early, and his father died even earlier. He's always had a stern face since he was a child. Don't take it to heart, but I think he's been in a good mood recently. He often smiles for no reason. Anyway, if he bullies you, tell grandfather, and I'll teach him a lesson. Grandfather talked to me for a long time. Finally, Jianpei came in and interrupted him. It's almost 5 o'clock, she still needs to go home for dinner. Before leaving, Jianpei said to me a little awkwardly, I'll be back at school in a few days. Okay, I nodded. After a few seconds of silence, Jianpei spoke again. I remember everything you said last time. He lowered his head, his voice becoming softer. So, I'll work hard. On the way home, I was thinking about how to ask Fuchin to spare me and not tell my parents what he knew, but before I could say anything, Fuchin asked me first, was it also for him that you asked me for those books last time? Yes. Do you like him? Yes. My mouth answered this question faster than my brain could think. Oh no, I had just added another charge of puppy love to my list of crimes. Oh, unexpectedly, Fuchin just nodded slightly. Don't worry, I won't tell your parents about this. I stood there, thinking I had misheard, but Fuchin kept walking, and his pace was getting faster and faster. I just had a chat with him. He seems like a nice guy, but he's a bit depressed. You can remind him to see a doctor. That's good, he said. We've known each other for so many years, and this is the first time I've seen you be so brave. It seems like you've become an adult before me. A few days later, as he promised, Jianpei returned to school and focused on his studies. In November, art exam policies were introduced in various provinces. Other art students in the school took leave for art exam training, but only Jianpei remained in the classroom for classes. It wasn't that he was overly confident in himself, it was simply because he didn't have the money. His family originally had little savings, and his grandfather's hospitalization cost a large sum. If I hadn't kept an eye on him, he would have planned to eat instant noodles that cost 2 yuan per pack every day. It's so tough. How could it be this tough? I lay on the desk, feeling miserable. He somehow sensed my emotions and instead comforted me. Just because we don't have money now doesn't mean we'll never have it. I still have the money for the travel expenses to take the exams. Better not comfort me. The two of us, with a combined psychological age of almost 60, can't scrape together more than a few dollars. All I seem to be able to do is stay by his side, and help him with his math, physics, and chemistry, where his average scores are less than 40. At the beginning of December, Jianpei took a half-month leave to take exams at major art universities across the country, so every day after the evening self-study, I was always the first one to rush out of the classroom, all for the sake of running to the school phone booth and making a call to him. Calls from the school phone automatically hung up after 3 minutes. In order to talk to him more, my stutter was almost cured. Did you eat well today? A helpless reply came from the other end. Yes, I ate KFC. The beef buns sold at the stall outside the door. They're delicious, 5 yuan each. How about your mood? I was afraid he would have an episode while he was away. Not bad. Jianpei seemed to be smiling on the other end, but I'm extremely happy right now. When I returned to the dormitory, my roommates thought I had a fever. Otherwise, why was my face as red as a ripe tomato? The day Jianpei came back, the small southern city unexpectedly had a heavy snowfall. When he entered the classroom with his bag on his back, the snowflakes on his shoulders hadn't melted yet. They sparkled and looked beautiful. However, he seemed to have lost a lot of weight. It happened to be a physics class. The old teacher was lecturing vigorously on the podium, while Jianpei secretly took something out of his bag and stuffed it to me. It was a metal badge related to the Little Prince, the protagonist of my favorite story. The badge was very exquisite, with the main part depicting the Little Prince standing on planet B612, along with his rose. This time, the Little Prince found his rose. Jianpei said softly. My vision gradually blurred. Am I the Little Prince or the rose? The Little Prince who traveled through countless planets and finally mustered the courage to search for his rose. Jianpei, come and solve this problem on the blackboard. I don't know how. This year, the Spring Festival came particularly early. After the New Year's Eve dinner, I lay on the sofa and took a short nap, then had a dream. In the dream, there were 2 paths in front of me. At the end of one path was Jianpei, at the end of the other path was me at the age of 28. A voice echoed in my heart, choose one, choose one. Without the slightest hesitation, I walked over to Jianpei. Have you made your choice? Yes, I have. As soon as I nodded, the sound of fireworks outside the window woke me up from my dream. Looking at the time, only a few minutes had passed. The fireworks outside the window were still bursting. I grabbed my phone, ran to the balcony, and dialed a number. Hello, Jianpei's voice came from the phone. Jianpei, I just had a dream. There was a moment of silence on the other end, and then he asked me, what kind of dream? I dreamed about choosing between you and myself, unexpectedly. Jianpei didn't ask me which one I finally chose. He just said, now that you mention it, I also had a similar dream before. In the dream, at the end, he asked me if I wanted to wake up. What did you choose? He was taken aback. Guess. TCH, I looked up at the fireworks bursting in the sky. Jianpei, the new year is almost here. Yeah, after the new year. We'll be another year older. After the new year, we would be 19 years old together. Just a few days after New Year's Eve, the hard-working senior high school seniors had to go back to school. With less than half a year left until the college entrance examination, almost everyone focused all their attention on review, and Jianpei needed to work even harder, although his art exam scores were incredibly excellent. If his college entrance examination scores didn't reach the admission line, no matter how good his art exam results were, they would be useless. Fortunately, in the new semester, our seats remained unchanged. Of course, I took it upon myself to give him extra tutoring. After all, he couldn't understand much of what was taught in class, but after tutoring him for a long time, sometimes I didn't have time to finish my own homework. After this happened several times, Mr. Lee had an opinion and even called me to the office to scold me. It's a good thing to help classmates, but you also need to take care of your own grades. But this was the only time, because in the following mock exams, I ranked first in the whole school every time, and I remained the top scorer in math, physics, and chemistry without exception. If a student has good grades, they are treated like a treasure everywhere. After that, Mr. Lee never bothered me about whether I handed in my homework or not. Well, actually, I still had to hand in my Chinese homework because I only scored around 110 points every time. Jianpei's grades also improved rapidly, perhaps due to his mature psychological age. Although he didn't have much knowledge stored in his mind, he studied in an orderly manner, coupled with his non-stop studying. In the last mock exam, his total score exceeded the previous year's admission line by 40 or 50 points. Half a month before the college entrance examination, we took graduation photos. Standing next to him, I suddenly remembered that something hadn't developed according to the previous trajectory. For example, this time, no one spread rumors about Jianpei's family background, and Jianpei didn't get into a fight, and when taking the graduation photo, I was truly standing beside him. While the photographer was still adjusting the equipment, I poked Jianpei and told him my discovery. That's because the person who spread the rumors before was jealous that I often outshone him by performing in school activities. Jianpei was a bit speechless. Oh, that explains it. In the past 6 months, Jianpei had been buried in doing practice questions day and night, not participating in any school activities. He didn't even have the chance to interact with that person, let alone have a conflict. Classmates, are you ready? The photographer called out in front. I looked at the camera, but my hand hidden by my side couldn't stay still. Secretly, I hooked one of Jianpei's fingers. Jianpei, Mr. Lee called out to him when looking at the photos. You seem to be in a great mood today. The college entrance examination passed by in a flash, so quickly that it felt like a dream. This time, I was admitted to a key university in the north, whose physics department was one of the best in the country. Jianpei was also admitted to a conservatory of music in the capital. The school held a graduation ceremony at the end of July and specially invited Jianpei as a guest performer. Mr. Lee said to me during a casual chat, if this kid becomes famous in the future, our school will make a fortune. Yeah, he has good judgment. Jianpei's performance was the opening act. He held a guitar and sang Rice Field on stage, making the audience cheer loudly. After he finished singing, I waited for him off stage, but he didn't come back. My phone vibrated when I took it out. It was a message from Jianpei. I'm in the classroom, with everyone gathered in the school auditorium. The teaching building had never been so quiet. It was so quiet that I could clearly hear my pounding heartbeat. The classroom was on the 4th floor. Just as I reached the mezzanine between the 3rd and 4th floors, I saw Jianpei. He was sitting on the steps, propping his face with one hand and smiling. I stopped 3 or 4 meters away from him. What's up? There's a song I've always wanted to sing to you in person but never did. Wan Yuan. Is it still too late to sing it now? Was it still too late? We used to be cowards. We clearly liked each other but missed out on 10 years. With red eyes, I said, it's not too late. Time went back 10 years, and we had gone through so much together. This time, Jianpei sat on the steps with a guitar in his arms, looking at me, and sang that song again. The song he had only sung to me. The song written only for me. Finally, after the last note faded, I mustered up the courage to say the words that had been buried in my heart. Jianpei, I like you. Jianpei smiled, his eyes bright, and reached out his hand to me. So, can we hold hands? Can we walk forward together? The moment our fingers touched, Jianpei stood up and embraced me. I like you too, like you so much. It was our first love. Like the sunlight that falls on you in summer, not scorching hot. Because a breeze has blown by. Before going to university to register, I went to the temple again. This time, I went with Jianpei. This time, it was Jianpei who knelt devoutly in front of the Guanyin statue and prayed. I stood by and watched him, smiling. I thought you wouldn't believe in this kind of thing. It had been a full year since we were reborn, and my stutter was almost completely cured. Jianpei looked at me. Shouldn't I be the one saying that? Oh, he's right. I almost forgot that I used to study physics. There was a fairly well-known love tree outside the temple, with red ribbons hanging from its branches. At a glance, most of the ribbons had the names of both parties written on them. I stared at them for a long time. Just as I was about to ask Jianpei if he wanted to hang one too, I turned around and saw that he already had a red ribbon in his hand. Why didn't you ask me? I wanted to tease him. Jianpei narrowed his eyes. You don't want to? Yes, I do. I blinked. I just didn't expect that the famous Mr. Jiang would be so proactive. This time, Jianpei didn't blush, but when hanging the ribbon, he suddenly said, You took 99 steps towards me. I have to take the last step. Actually, that's not true. Jianpei took the first step too. He took that extremely important first step, which led to our current happy ending. When we were about to leave, a monk in the temple stopped Jianpei, saying that the abbot wanted to talk to him. I waited outside the room. It would be a lie to say I wasn't worried. After all, after the abbot stopped me last time, things didn't go so well. But then I thought, it didn't matter. No matter what hardships came our way, we were going to be together. When Jianpei came out, his expression didn't change. On the way down the mountain, I asked him, What did the abbot say to you? Jianpei paused, then replied honestly, I forgot. He talked a lot in classical Chinese, and I didn't understand, but I did understand the last sentence. What was it? He congratulated me on finally coming through all the hardships. The story that followed could indeed be described as after suffering comes happiness. During his freshman year, Jianpei registered an account on a certain video sharing platform and became one of the first music bloggers. He didn't show his face, but with his original songs, he easily became a top recommended blogger on the platform. Then, when netizens suspected that he might not be good looking, he participated in a talent show and debuted first by a huge margin. Hee, the thoughts of a 30-year-old man. He's quite good at playing hard to get, of course. His biological father still had the nerve to come and ask him for money in this life, but a long time ago, the last bit of their relationship was severed by his father's own actions. Jianpei didn't give him a single cent, so his father went online to complain and appeared on TV shows, severely criticizing Jianpei for not recognizing his own father on the shows. Then Jianpei sued him in court for abandonment, extortion, and slander. Each charge was enough to send him to prison for a while. And when it came to using the internet, how could he possibly compare to Jianpei, who had been in the entertainment industry for 8 or 9 years? In the end, he ended up ruined and had to serve an 8-year prison sentence. As for me, I just remained an ordinary college student, but because I had already learned all the knowledge, I ranked first in my major in every exam. Then my supervisor invited me to participate in research and write SCI papers. When I got busy, I could go a whole day without replying to Jianpei's messages. The consequence of often not checking my phone was that I learned about my boyfriend's rumored romances from the casual conversations of my junior female classmates. Jianpei had declared from the beginning that he wasn't single, but he had never revealed any information about me, so it was reasonable that netizens paired him up with others. While I was still browsing Weibo to catch up on the so-called gossip, my father suddenly called. As soon as I answered, I heard him angrily say, Is the news about Jianpei on the internet true? I even regarded him as my future son-in-law. I was nice to him the last time he sent you home. I found it funny and deliberately asked, When did you start regarding him as your son-in-law? Didn't you think he would affect me before? This time, it was my father's turn to stutter and be at a loss for words. The news is fake, I laughed. If I didn't have this much confidence, I might as well break up with Jianpei. Sure enough, that night, Jianpei posted on Weibo, I have a girlfriend, I've liked her for many years, as shown in the picture. The picture was of 2 1-yuan coins. For a time, there were all kinds of speculations, so he added a comment, her study and work require a quiet environment, and I don't want anyone to disturb her. When I saw this comment, my head was resting on Jiang Pei's shoulder. He took a 3-hour high-speed train to my city, just to snuggle up with me on the sofa and watch a movie. The story on the screen was coming to an end, the protagonists hugged each other and then kissed passionately. I was watching intently, but Jiang Pei raised his hand and covered my eyes. "What are you doing? Don't look at improper things." Just as I was about to mock him for pretending to be innocent at his age, I felt a soft and moist touch on my lips. Along with the warm breath exhaled by Jiang Pei, I don't know how long the kiss lasted. It lasted until my whole body started to heat up and I let out a whimper. Then Jiang Pei finally let me go. "Wan Yuan," he smiled, his voice hoarse and sexy, but there were tears in his eyes. "I love you." The song Jiang Pei wrote for me was never released. When I asked him why after we got married, Jiang Pei's face turned red, which was a rare sight. "Because it's a song exclusively for you. Because it's a memory exclusive to us." Epilogue, virtual. When did Jiang Pei realize that his condition had become more severe? It was when he saw Wan Yuan. He had originally thought that he was just severely depressed, but that was still manageable. After taking his medication, he could constrainedly fall asleep, albeit in a groggy state, unable to distinguish between reality and dreams. But after waking up from a dream one day, he was sweating. As soon as he got out of bed, he suddenly heard a noise coming from the living room. When he went over to check, the sight of someone's back made his heart skip a beat. Time seemed to stand still at that moment. Wan Yuan was wearing the white shirt she used to wear most often in high school, with her back to him. While Jiang Pei was still in a daze, Wan Yuan turned around and saw him. "Desk mate," she called him slowly, smiling. Jiang Pei understood almost immediately that this was just his imagination. Wan Yuan would never smile at him like that. The doctor's words echoed in his ears. "This illness may cause symptoms of auditory and visual hallucinations later on, and that's when it gets really serious." He seemed to know everything, but he still couldn't help approaching her. "Jiang Pei." Wan Yuan looked up at him, her tone more cheerful than he had ever heard. "Long time no see." This was the person he had been thinking about for so long. The one he softly called out to every late night when he couldn't fall asleep. This was the fabricated, virtual Wan Yuan. Jiang Pei tugged at the corners of his mouth, but warm tears escaped from his eyes. "Long time no see, Wan Yuan." So what if it was virtual? He might as well consider it a lucid dream. It was his deepest, most hidden secret. "Are you feeling unwell anywhere recently?" "No, I reserved the first seat for the concert as you asked. But I didn't see your friend come." "Why, she came." She was here, I saw her." "Maybe she left in a hurry." It was another rainy day with heavy downpours. Jiang Pei sat by the floor-to-ceiling window, with Wan Yuan beside him. The thunder outside was so loud that it made his head spin. "Wan Yuan," he called her softly. "I'm here." Jiang Pei turned to look at her. He must have been out of his mind because he slowly leaned towards Wan Yuan. Just this once, let him cross the line. But when his lips were just 1 centimeter away from hers, he stopped. He lost his courage once again. "What's wrong?" Her voice reached his ears. It even seemed like he could feel her warm breath, which was too real. He was silent for a moment, and finally smiled. "It's nothing." What was Wan Yuan to him? She was the intimacy he had never had and couldn't grasp. She was the virtual presence who accompanied him day and night yet remained out of reach. In the end, his manager noticed something was wrong. His schedule was forcibly interrupted, and he was confined to his home. He had to receive treatment from a doctor every day and take countless capsules. Wan Yuan also disappeared. His heart felt empty in an instant, and the virtual dream finally shattered. He suddenly felt regretful. He should have been braver. If he had been braver, he could have kissed Wan Yuan. If he had been a little braver, would everything not have been just a virtual dream? A foolish dream. Jiang Pei had a dream that lasted a very long time, so long that he felt as if he had lived his life all over again, so long that he could no longer tell the difference between reality and the void. In fact, he didn't want to wake up at all. He vaguely remembered what he had done before falling into a deep sleep. He must have had an episode. In front of him appeared a black sea, as dark as ink, where anything that entered would be swallowed up. He was no exception. At that moment, he suddenly felt tired. It was hard to explain. Maybe he also felt a sense of relief. Anyway, he couldn't hold on to anything he wanted to. In a trance, he suddenly thought of Wan Yuan, the little stutterer, also a fool, the big bad guy who hadn't contacted him for years and had left him behind, but also the star he had yearned for until the very last moment. He struggled to get to the computer, calmly set a time, and sent an email to Ruan Yuan. Then, exhausted, he collapsed to the floor. It was the last step he had mustered the courage to take. After a long time, he involuntarily got up, took his sedatives, and popped them into his mouth one by one like candies. When sleepiness overcame him, he became a little more sober. His hand struggled to reach for the water on the table, but he ended up knocking over the glass and cutting his hand. Scarlet blood dripped onto the floor, and it seemed as if something had broken. Bang! In a daze. He seemed to have returned to the time when he first met Ruan Yuan in senior high school, but this time, Ruan Yuan seemed different. She no longer seemed as silent and shy as in his memory. She would take the initiative to talk to him, stutteringly introduce herself, and loudly say okay when the old teacher asked her to explain problems to him. She had also become much bolder, daring to look straight at him and even saying that he was good looking. It must be a dream, it had to be a dream, yet. He was greedy. Everything felt too real, making it impossible for him to tell whether it was reality or a dream. He heard someone's heartbeat, pounding loudly in his ears. He could clearly see the texture of her lips and smell the faint fragrance on her. Ruan Yuan even took the initiative to grab his hand and hold it tightly in hers. Jiang Pei, her voice was clear. I'm here, I'm right here. By his side, the sea lost its color. His world was no longer a silent darkness. When his consciousness was on the verge of drowning, a voice asked him, "Do you want to wake up?" Should he wake up, Jiang Pei thought, he might as well just keep sleeping. Even if it was a dream, he would accept it. He simply couldn't bear a world without Ruan Yuan. Worst case scenario, it was just a foolish dream. Worst case scenario, he would just sleep forever. The long season. The winter in City Z suddenly felt extremely long to Fuqing. On the day of the first snowfall, Fuqing got off work early, which was a rare occurrence. Then he went to the flower shop downstairs and bought a new bouquet of lily of the valley. He only ever bought lily of the valley, to the extent that whenever the shop assistants saw him, they would directly say, "Today's lily of the valley is also very fresh." Another bouquet. He nodded slightly, but this time he added, "Please wrap it nicely." The shop assistant smiled. "Are you giving these to someone this time?" After all, he had never requested special packaging before. Fuqing was taken aback for a moment, and finally just nodded. In fact, he had always been giving the flowers to someone. With the flowers in hand, Fuqing went straight to the hospital. As the new year approached, the hospital was quiet and deserted. The young nurse at the front desk already knew him well. After greeting him, she let him go to Ruan Yuan's ward. He opened the door of the ward and immediately saw Ruan Yuan lying on the bed, as if she were asleep. After placing the flowers by her bedside, Fuqing sat down. Ruan Yuan seemed to have lost even more weight compared to the last time he visited. She was already a small, framed person, and now she looked even tinier. Fuqing looked at her quietly for a long, long time. The doctor had already told him that the chance of Ruan Yuan waking up was slim, because upon observation, it seemed that she simply had no motivation to wake up and return to the real world. To be honest, he didn't understand why Ruan Yuan, who had always been silent and timid, chose to act bravely when she happened to see a high school student attempting to jump into the river a year ago. Judging from the surveillance footage, she didn't hesitate at all. She followed the person and plunged into the icy river. She saved the person, but she herself hadn't woken up yet due to staying in the water for too long. Why? Was it because she couldn't bear to see someone so young lose their life? Or was it because the person's back resembled someone else's? He still remembered that when he rushed to the hospital, Ruan Yuan's parents were crying uncontrollably, and her mother almost fainted in the hospital corridor. Did she really not consider the consequences of doing this at all? Fuqing unconsciously clenched his fists, and a sour feeling welled up in his throat. Ruan Yuan had approached him on her own initiative after Jiang Pei's death. In the consultation room, she kept her head down, with red-rimmed eyes. "Recently, I can't sleep at all through the night. Every time I close my eyes, I feel like crying." Finally, she looked up and asked him, "Fuqing, am I sick?" Ruan Yuan played the last email Jiang Pei sent to her for him. After the audio ended, he could no longer remain calm. "Ruan Yuan, he's such a coward. All these years, he had countless opportunities to send you this. Why did he have to do it now? Why did he send Ruan Yuan this email? Why make the living bear such guilt?" Jiang Pei was clearly a scumbag, but Ruan Yuan unexpectedly calmed down. "Yes, he's a coward. A few days ago, a lawyer came to me and gave me a large sum of money, saying it was a voluntary gift from Jiang Pei. Do you remember that I received a lot of gifts on my birthdays during college? It turns out he was the one who sent them. But I always sent them back untouched. Yes, what he did, to put it bluntly, was self-indulgent. In the end, tears welled up in Ruan Yuan's eyes. But the problem is, I like him too. Ding, Ruan Yuan herself had revealed the root of all the problems. Because they liked each other, that's why the pain was suffocating. Even Fu Cheng's heart ached sharply. Finally, in a daze, he asked her, did it start from high school? I took several days off and stayed at home. He only Fu Cheng, I'm a coward too. This was the last thing Ruan Yuan said to him. Cowards. Fu Cheng's gaze shifted to the flowers on the bedside. Lily of the valley. Ruan Yuan wasn't particularly interested in flowers, but she loved this one the most. Because its flower language was returning happiness. It was still snowing outside the window. And the snow was falling even more heavily. The dense snowflakes seemed to want to bury the whole world. Fu Cheng took a deep breath. They were all cowards, and no one could blame the others, but this winter was just too long. He had never seen such a long season. Story 2, in a previous life, on the day I fell from a building and lost my sight, my fiancé was on the hospital rooftop kissing his first love. When he saw my mangled body, he had a sudden change of heart. Lamenting his belated realization, it was you who started from scratch with me, who stood by me through thick and thin. How could I have been so blinded by her? I looked at the anguished man with disdain, a tear of self-mockery rolling down my cheek. After being reborn, his first love kissed him passionately, cruelly mocking me for my foolish hopes, confident that the now impoverished man would one day achieve great success and wealth. She was wrong. Without my help, her man would remain nothing but a reckless fool with lofty ambitions but no substance. 7 days after losing my sight in a car accident, lying in the hospital bed, I seemed to have grown accustomed to the darkness that greeted my open eyes. Perhaps because I woke up early from my nap today. Ranya wasn't in the room. In the hallway, the 2 nurses taking care of me were gossiping. Mr. Ran and Miss Meng are truly a match made in heaven. The proposal ceremony was the talk of the town. Mr. Rance kneeling was like a scene out of a romantic schoolyard confession from back in the day. Weren't you and Mr. Ran from the same school? How come I heard that the one who's blind and lying in the hospital bed is actually Mr. Rance's fiancée? She's at best a persistent suitor of Mr. Rance, and quite shameless at that. She rode the coattails of the IT elite for years, even disowning her own parents. People like her deserve to end up disabled. Mr. Ran meets Miss Meng on the rooftop every day at this time. They're really sweet together. I bit my lip hard, feeling a suffocating ache in my chest, as if a sharp knife was slicing through my organs. I stifled my sobs. The man who whispered in my ear before nap time, promising to celebrate my birthday with me upon waking, was already entangled with his first love. Memories flooded back, piercing my mind like shards of glass, shattering my last defenses. A grand proposal, a perfect match. They were indeed well suited for each other. What was I then? A joke? I fumbled out of bed, and not 2 steps later, I tripped over a chair, pain shooting through my knee. The nurses at the door, upon hearing the noise, laughed and pretended not to see my plight. Leaving together, I had grown used to this. My body bore many bruises from bumps and scrapes, unnoticed by the nurses, and so far undiscovered by Ranyao. He was always busy, glancing at me briefly before being whisked away by trivial company matters. Now I understood. He was just fitting me in during a break from his dates with Meng Wanqiu, not wanting anyone to see my disheveled state. I groped along the wall to the stairwell. The hospital stairs were long, and the pain of a broken rib in my chest sounded an alarm through my body. I clenched my lips, suppressing the taste of blood in my throat, driven to confront him for an answer. Perhaps because the cleaning staff had just mopped, I slipped unexpectedly, a slight sound coming from my ankle as I fell to the ground. In that instant, memory surged. During a physical test years ago, I sprained my ankle and fell on the track field. Ranya rushed through the crowd to me, his lips pursed with worry, carrying me to the infirmary. Afraid I was in pain, he gently massaged my ankle along the way. The doctor advised me to walk less, so he took it upon himself to carry me to and from school. At the age of 16 or 17, he carried me up and down the 6 flights of stairs of the old-style residential building. The boy in my memories shone like a brilliant meteor streaking across the night sky, once illuminating my youth but now as unfamiliar as a stranger. I leaned against the wall to support myself, the pain in my ankle intensifying with each step, until I reached the rooftop and touched the iron door. The car accident was truly an accident, it's all my fault. I noticed there was a problem with the brakes that day, but I got distracted and forgot to tell you. The low male voice gently comforted the sobbing woman, his tone full of pity. I could almost see the pain in his eyes. Forget it, what's done is done. If anyone is to blame, it's just Lu Mu's bad luck, the young man and woman whispered softly, their voices tender and affectionate, quickly turning into sounds of suppressed passion. The fear of near death from the accident still lingered in my body, causing me to tremble all over, each breath cutting through my chest like a knife. I had lost my sight, broken 3 ribs, yet all I got in return was his remark about my bad luck. The betrayal of a lover was more terrifying than darkness. As I opened the iron door and stepped out, I despairingly realized that I couldn't discern their location. I wanted to curse, to vent, to denounce Io's betrayal. But when the words reached my lips, all that came out was a choke. In my panic, I felt a harsh push from behind. The pain in my ankle worsened. I stumbled forward, then suddenly felt myself hanging in the air, plummeting straight down. As my soul separated from my shattered limbs, I saw Io rushing over clumsily. People surrounded my body. He forcefully made his way through the crowd, pausing in shock when he saw my twisted corpse, then abruptly stepped back. Watching his expression turn from blank to stiff, his cheeks twitching as if in agony, he rushed forward and slowly knelt by my feet. My blood, still warm, soaked his neat suit pants. It seemed to scald him, his body trembling violently. Seeing his expression darken with sorrow, I felt, for a moment, that Io might have truly cared for me. Io, the dead cannot be brought back, mourn and move on. Meng Wanqiu stepped forward to pull Io away, but he shook off her hand as if electrocuted. Stumbling backwards, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the ground, his eyes filled with resentment towards her, some advised him to mourn and move on, others noted his deep feelings, yet Io seemed deaf to the world, his back bent severely, his shoulders shaking. He frantically tried to realign my dislocated bones, to wipe the blood from my face, but it just wouldn't come off. He closed his eyes briefly, overwhelmed by sorrow, unable to face my lifeless gaze. Helplessly, he withdrew his hands, his face deathly pale, his voice hoarse and broken. Xiao Mu, I'm sorry, it should have been me who died, why wasn't it me? This belated affection seemed to me now cheaper than dirt. When I opened my eyes again, I was reborn on the college basketball court. The tall figure in front of me, back slightly bent, had been kneeling under the scorching sun for half an hour. It was my lover from a past life, Io. He had just been rejected by the girl he adored under the moonlight, surrounded by a crowd of onlooking students. Some mocked him as a poor boy aiming too high, others pitied him for not exploring more options. Just then, a malicious voice emerged from the crowd. Lu Mu, don't you like Io? Take this chance while he's heartbroken, maybe it'll give you a chance to strike when the iron is hot. Laughter erupted around us. And the young man's gaze slowly shifted towards me, his dark eyes sparkling. At this moment, he lacked the composure and the slackness brought on by wealth of his later years. His expression was aloof and rebellious, and there was a hint of barely noticeable ambition. I used to be captivated by the pride in his gaze, always feeling that he had an unreachable sense of aloofness. Looking back now, it's absurd. He was just an ordinary person. It was my affection that cast him in a different light. In my past life, I pitied him when he was mocked by everyone, holding a special affection for him deep in my heart. I openly declared my feelings, picking up his trampled sincerity from the mud where Meng Wanqiu had left it, presenting it to him along with my own heart, giving him the dignity and vanity a man deserves. If I could do it all over again, I'd rather see him kneel and perish on the field. Just as Ran Yao was confident I'd come to his rescue, the crowd suddenly parted, a figure returned. It was Meng Wanqiu. She was drenched in sweat, gasping for air as she clutched her chest, and with a long arm, she shielded Ran Yao behind her, glaring at me viciously. Ran Yao is mine, give up on him, she hissed. I slowly curled my lips into a smile. Turns out, I wasn't the only one who was reborn. In my previous life, Meng Wanqiu never ended up with Ran Yao. She had planned to use Ran Yao's fame and fortune to help her bankrupt father make a comeback, but after my death, Ran Yao inexplicably sold off our company, valued at billions, and donated all the money to charity, keeping none for himself. Meng Wanqiu desperately ran to the apartment Ran Yao and I once shared, skillfully entering the password to let herself in. Under the dim light, a disheveled man surrounded by bottles and cigarette ashes held my photo. Drunk and unconscious, Meng Wanqiu cried incessantly, hoping her tender words would win back the man's affection. Ran Yao, look at me. I'm the one alive and by your side, forget her, please. Originally, you liked me, she pleaded. She tried everything, even stripping naked, only to receive a self-mocking glance from him. Originally, it was she who started from scratch with me, who faced difficulties with me. How could I be fooled by someone like you, who only loves vanity? Meng Wanqiu cried even harder, shaking her head repeatedly. No. I had a reason for rejecting you initially. My father forced me to go abroad, Ran Yao. I've always liked you, whether you were a poor boy or a rich man. My feelings for you will never change. Let's pull ourselves together. We can start another company. You are talented and gifted. You can certainly make it great again. Ran Yao pushed her away, letting the broken glass cut into her skin without a second glance. Furious, Meng Wanqiu cursed at my grave day after day, saying I wouldn't let her have peace even in death. That I still monopolized Ran Yao's heart from below the ground. The luxury I enjoyed while alive should have been hers. If only she hadn't rejected Ran Yao back then, there would have been no place for me. I sat on my grave, watching her with amusement. The once scorned poor boy, now a successful IT mogul after a few years, the once proud and untroubled rich girl, now fallen from grace, realized that her former suitors had made their fortune. He longed to return to the past, a decision akin to the folly of craving the grass behind him. How could one expect to achieve anything substantial without putting in the effort? Ran Yao's current success was not handed to him on a silver platter. I was the one who entertained investors and drank until my stomach bled. I worked tirelessly through nights, revising project proposals. It was I who helped Ran Yao ascend to his current esteemed position, earning him widespread adoration and applause. Otherwise, with his proud and impulsive nature, he would have been devoured in the ruthless business world, leaving nothing behind. Not even bones. Meng Wanqiu obviously couldn't hear the pleas of my heart. Her venomous gaze fell upon my photograph, her face twisting grotesquely. If I were given another chance, I would never let go of Ran Yao. And in another life, she did just that. Meng Wanqiu grabbed Ran Yao by the hand, pulling him up from the plastic track, and picked up a dust-covered rose from the ground. She carefully dusted it off. Her arrogance mixed with a smug confidence. Ah Yao, from today onwards, you are mine. The scene before everyone was shocking. Just moments before, the school beauty had been angrily mocking her impoverished suitor. The next second, she was on her tiptoes, planting a kiss on him, claiming her ownership publicly. Ran Yao was clearly stunned, confusion overshadowing his joy as his eyes frantically searched the surroundings, finally resting on me. That look was all too familiar. Whenever he faced a problem or felt uncertain, he would seek my help with that same expression. Lu Mu, President Song of Qianhua has a gathering tonight. Will you accompany me? You know the project details better than I do. The company still needs 10 million for the first round of financing. Lu Mu, give it another try. The vice president of Yuanguan Group was quite impressed with you last time. Even now, I remained his childhood friend, having stood by his side for many years. The affection from our childhood, the support we provided each other as adults, the countless nights we spent together. Yet Ran Yao allowed me to become blind in a car accident without holding Meng Wanqiu even slightly accountable. A chilling coldness crept up my spine. Could their involvement have also pushed me off that building? Ran Yao's gaze lingered on me a bit too long, causing Meng Wanqiu's brow to furrow in anger. She stubbornly tiptoed and hooked her arms around his neck, delivering a kiss that was both intense and passionate. The sensational applause and cheers erupted around us. I pursed my lips, slightly raising my eyebrows, and joined the crowd in applauding. As Meng Wanqiu wished, it didn't take long for almost everyone on campus to know that the school beauty had madly fallen for a poor boy. She shadowed Ran Yao every day, whether it was in the professional classrooms or the student cafeteria. Their intimate and affectionate demeanor was evident to all. Meng Wanqiu's parents, however, were displeased and confronted the couple at the school gate. Wan, come home with us. We've arranged for you to study abroad. If you want to date, your father knows many well-educated boys from distinguished families. This poor boy, reeking of poverty, is not worthy of you. Meng Wanqiu sensed the man beside her growing tense, his expression suddenly darkening. Dad, what are you talking about? Ah Yao wins scholarships every year. He's outstanding. Her father scoffed. Those scholarships, are they enough for a trip to a Michelin-starred restaurant, or enough to buy a new designer bag? Don't lose your sense over a man. Our family provides you with a comfortable life. You should broaden your horizons and aim higher. Not. Ran Yao, expressionless, cut him off. Uncle Wan is not a tool for your ambitions. Our relationship is our own business. and it doesn't require your concern." With that, he left. He grabbed Meng Wanqiu and left. I stepped out from under the shade of the trees, watching Meng's father so angry that his body spasmed. I approached politely and asked how he was. When he heard that I was Ran Yao's classmate and childhood friend, his gaze swept over me with a hint of dissatisfaction. I pretended not to notice and tried to act like a lovelorn admirer, who, despite being dejected, defended the boy she liked with feigned composure. "Ran Yao is really pitiful. His father gambles and drinks heavily. His mother couldn't stand the long-term domestic abuse and ran away with someone else when he was very young. Ran Yao even earned his tuition fees by fighting in illegal boxing matches. Uncle, please let them be. He is truly a good boy." Meng's father's gaze was sharp as a knife, and his expression changed repeatedly. "His family has a history of violence too." Hearing this, I quickly shook my head, my eyes panicked as if trying to hide something, and then my eyes reddened, tears hanging on the brink of falling. No, his involvement in a fight and getting detained in high school was just because he was too impulsive when he was younger. By the end, my voice was choked and unclear. I wanted to continue my act, but Meng's father didn't give me the chance. He dialed a number and started yelling into the phone, "You choose to degrade yourself by being with such scum. Don't consider me your father from today onwards. All your credit cards are cancelled, and you're not allowed to stay in the apartment in the suburbs of Beijing. Let's see how long you can last." Meng Wanqiu cried out over the phone, "Dad, why won't you believe me? Ran Yao will be successful one day, and our family will have to beg for his help." Meng's father didn't believe her at all. Soon, Meng Wanqiu received a text message about her credit card being deactivated, her throat burning with anger. "No wonder our family will go bankrupt in the future. With your arbitrary nature, even a fortune would be squandered away by you." That single mention of bankruptcy infuriated Meng's father to the point where he almost had a heart attack. He felt like Meng Wanqiu had been blinded by stupidity, and he scolded her along with her mother, who usually doted on her daughter. "If I find out you're secretly giving her money, both of you can get out of this house." Meng's mother tried to calm her husband cautiously, not daring to utter a word of dissent. That evening, Meng Wanqiu kicked open my dorm room door, her eyes venomous as if poisoned. "It was you who badmouthed me in front of my parents, wasn't it? Lu Mu, you're even more shameless than I thought. Don't think I'll leave Ran Yao. He will only ever belong to me, and you're just a cheap woman no one wants even if you throw yourself at them." I closed the book in my hands, calmly meeting the gaze of the furious woman in front of me, who still only saw relationships as a means to an end. Perhaps my calmness irritated her, or perhaps she didn't see the jealousy and rage she expected. Meng Wanqiu smoothed her hair at her neck, revealing a triumphant red smirk. "Last night, Ran Yao was wild. It hurt a bit. Young men are so impatient. Who would have thought what he will become in the future?" Meng Wanqiu paused, her lips curving, and her eyes more rampant than before, her breath hot on my cheek, her tone threatening. "Don't set your sights on him. What right do you have to compete with me, with your post-graduation salary of 3,000 to 4,000 a month, or by seducing your useless foster father?" A thunderclap exploded by my ear. As if in an instant my hearing was stripped away, leaving only a roaring noise that grew louder and louder. I had thought that Ran Yao would be reluctant to part with Meng Wanqiu, and I guessed that their relationship was already ambiguous, but I never imagined he would think of me this way. Seduction. The young man who had once rushed home in the rain, beat that beast until he was bloody, and protected me, telling me it wasn't my fault, comforting me gently. Was this really how he saw me? I clenched my pen so hard that the sharp tip pierced my skin without feeling. Under the light that spilled over my head, I met Meng Wanqiu's gaze, perhaps finally seeing the annoyance in my eyes. She seemed unusually excited. "Is it true?" At first, I didn't believe it, but, "Lu Mu, you're despicable." I abruptly stood up, pushed her down onto the desk, and aimed a sharp pen at her palm, stabbing down hard. The pen tip broke, and a hole was poked in Meng Wanqiu's hand, blood trickling out. The fresh blood against her porcelain skin was strikingly conspicuous. She covered her palm and cried out, "Lu Mu, you've gone mad." She grabbed the paper scissors from the desk and lunged at me. As I saw someone rushing in from outside, I paused for a moment, turned my head to one side, and the sharp edge of the scissors grazed my neck. Blood dripped down to my collarbone, soaking the collar of my white dress. I clenched my teeth in pain, not making a sound. A pair of slender hands covered the wound, and the man in front of me had a chill and his eyes reminiscent of a winter day, his gaze sharply sweeping over the assailant. "You better have a good explanation." Seeing the man defending me, Meng Wanqiu's expression froze. She wanted to accuse the other of starting the fight first, but her mind suddenly flashed back to a scene of the man's past indifference. Ran Yao, you're protecting her. I'm your girlfriend. The skin under the palm on my neck shivered. I turned my face away, avoiding the man's touch. Ran Yao's eyebrows furrowed, his eyes fixed on me, his voice rough. Are you alright? I looked at him and coldly said, get out. Ran Yao looked stunned for a moment, his eyes filled with complex emotions, as if he couldn't accept that the girl who once only had eyes for him was now speaking to him with such indifference. I felt a chill. Ran Yao, like most men, was no different. When he was poor, all he thought about was how to make more money. After enjoying wealth, his thoughts turned to luxuries and desires, fine wine, women, and the thrill of regrets. These had become the new targets in his life. I never thought he cared much for Meng Wanqiu. It was just youthful pride and a man's desire at play, the unattainable moonlight and the mosquito blood already in hand. Men always think the best ones are those they haven't had yet. The wound on my neck looked worse than it was. It was actually not very deep, certainly lighter than the wound on Meng Wanqiu's hand. After a quick treatment, I sat back at my desk, the laptop screen in front of me filled with dense lines of code and formulas, a complete game script nearing its end. Suddenly, a notification popped up on my email. It was feedback from a technology company I had applied to a few days ago. Unsurprisingly, I had successfully obtained an interview with one of the top gaming companies in the country. I knew Ran Yao had also applied to this company. In my past life, I had helped him significantly improve his initial game model, and during the interview presentation, he shone brightly, performing second only to me among more than 20 other candidates. This time, I was eager to see how far he could go without my help. My phone screen suddenly lit up, and almost instantly, I hung up. The caller was persistent, as if determined not to give up, and when blocked, they resorted to sending text messages from other numbers. Lu Mu, do you have no conscience? Mom is so ill, and you can't even help, but can't you at least come to see her? The message was from my so-called younger brother, who wasn't related by blood and never spoke politely. It seemed like he had never called me sister since I could remember. Although I don't particularly care for it either, to me, that family hardly qualifies as one. If I must label it, it might as well be called a den of vampires, the root of all evil. In my previous life, my foster parents were healthy and lively, still hopping around even after I died, yet, Lu Xian claimed his mother was ill. It was obvious without thinking. Meng Wanqiu must have been upset about being outdone by me tonight and was stirring up trouble again. After all, my so-called brother was her fervent admirer, obsessively devoted to her as if drugged. Groveling in the dust, the only strategy she and my brother, flattened by the iron of their circumstance, could think of was to exploit a woman's innocence for their own ends. I scoffed, my laughter loud enough to startle my roommate returning late. Upon hearing about Meng Wanqiu causing a scene in the dormitory, she was even more furious than I was. Did that little hussy come strutting around? I used to think she was so picky, looking down on her suitors through her nostrils. Turns out she's blind to have set her sights on Ran Yao. Seeing that I didn't respond, she quickly covered her mouth, remembering that I used to be the blindest of all, and blind I was, blinded in a car accident in my past life, then falling from a high place, my brain splattered everywhere, my body too decayed to look at. All of this was thanks to that despicable man and woman. Since God has given me the chance to turn back time, how could I not make good use of it? How could I not live this life properly? Meng Wanqiu, you've done so much evil, you're bound to encounter ghosts. Karma is long overdue to fall upon you. On Friday morning, I made a trip to the tube houses near the university town. My foster parents doted on their son, fearing he wouldn't adjust well to living and eating at school, so they rented a house to stay close to him. Pushing open the rusty iron gate, I was greeted by a strong smell of tobacco and alcohol. The house was eerily quiet. Except for the hurried footsteps coming from the bedroom, Lu Xian appeared before me, his yellow hair and his face a perfect blend of his father's sleaziness and his mother's harshness, with small, shifty eyes. At that moment, his pupils flashed with ill intent. The sun is harsh outside, you must be thirsty, have a drink to cool down. He offered me a bottle of soda, already opened, with a lift of his eyebrows and a look of arrogant pride, as if being served by him was a great honor. I barely lifted my eyelids and took the bottle without drinking. Aren't you saying your mom is seriously ill? Where is she? Lu Xian's smile faded instantly. Lu Mu, what's this about your mom and my mom? Don't forget your roots. If it weren't for my family taking you in, you would have starved on the streets hundreds of times. I had heard this phrase so often growing up that it made my ears callous. They couldn't have children for many years. And upon hearing advice to adopt a girl compatible with their zodiac to bring luck for a son, they did just that. Sure enough, they had a boy the following year, and their looks of disdain towards me grew. If it weren't for their fear of damaging their moral integrity and losing the annual subsidy of 2,000 yuan from the government, they would have abandoned me long ago. From a young age, I knew I was unwelcome in the family, yet I still harbored hopes for familial affection. Until that stormy night, the violent slap from my foster father, the cold gaze of my foster mother. If I hadn't stabbed the man and escaped, I would have lived in the shadow of this family forever. After that night, I never returned home, and they never gave me any living expenses. Years later, as Ran Yao's and my company was doing well, that couple protested under our building, accusing me of being unfilial until I fell to my death. They never once visited my grave. He constantly complained to everyone he met that he had raised an ungrateful wretch, saying that such a person deserved a short and miserable life. Lucien, as the biological son of his adoptive parents, was equally greedy and shameless. He blamed my death on the negligence of the hospital staff and managed to get a substantial compensation. The so-called dutiful son took the money and spent it all to win over Meng Wanqiu's favor, without leaving a penny for his parents. Even now, recalling his heartless and ungrateful demeanor gives me chills. Lucien became anxious when he noticed that I kept refusing to drink the beverage, and his phone rang while he was urging me. He glanced at me in a fluster, hurried upstairs, and closed the door to take the call. I went over to the sink and poured the drink from the glass bottle into a ceramic bowl in the corner. When Lucien returned, he saw me lying unconscious on the sofa, clutching the empty bottle. He kicked my shoulder with the tip of his shoe and sneered, "You dare to hurt Wan, you lowlife unworthy of public appearance. Today, I'll strip your clothes and record a video for the whole school." As he turned to get a camera from the cabinet, he barely pulled open the drawer when his head was struck hard, causing him to spin around and fall unconscious to the ground. The glass bottle shattered on the floor, and his phone dropped as well. I picked up the phone, opened the chat history, and sent messages to Meng Wanqiu and my foster father. As expected, Meng Wanqiu was lurking nearby. Upon receiving the message, she rushed over immediately. She burst through the door, impatiently complaining, "Why did you take so long? Do you know how hot it is outside? I'm about to die from the heat." Before she could finish, her knees were struck hard with a stick, causing excruciating pain. She immediately fell to her knees, and then 2 loud slaps followed. Caught off guard by the sudden onslaught, Meng Wanqiu was stunned and couldn't even cry out before someone grabbed her mouth and forced an unknown liquid down her throat. As she lay coughing violently on the floor, her eyes and nose streaming with tears and mucus, she finally saw me standing in front of her. "What did you make me drink?" She stepped back, glancing at Lucien, who lay unconscious on the floor, her speech faltering with fear. I flipped the bowl upside down on the table and let out a cold laugh. "Of course, it's the kind gift you prepared for me." The dizziness in her head made Meng Wanqiu realize I was not joking. Her expression drastically changed, and she frantically started to gag herself, but she couldn't stop the blurring of her consciousness or the strange feeling rising in her abdomen. I moved the person into the bedroom, locking her hands and feet in handcuffs, something Lucien never imagined would be used on his beloved goddess. When I arrived at the technology company for an interview, the hallway was already filled with candidates. Unsurprisingly, I saw Ran Yao among the crowd. He was nervously fidgeting with the corner of his suit jacket, a subconscious gesture when he was anxious. In our past life, we founded a company and secured our first investment from Guanming Group, which was the company we were interviewing with today. Back then, soon after resigning from Guanming, fueled by passion and a vision for the future, we pledged to establish the best gaming company in the country. He was in charge of product design, and I was responsible for market expansion. As we waited in the meeting room for the Guanming executive, he was as nervous as he was today. "AMU. If they don't like our design or agree with our vision, all our efforts this past year will be wasted." I leaned gently on his shoulder, intertwining my fingers with his anxious ones, my tone firm. "We will succeed. Don't forget, you promised to take me to see the northern lights in Iceland and to lie on the beaches of Barcelona in the sun." Whether it was my conviction that reassured him or the mention of Iceland that triggered a memory, Ran Yao's gaze briefly faltered. At that time, I didn't notice. My heart was filled with the joy of imminent dreams achieved. 3 days ago, the head of Yuan Guan Group had already approached me. He highly recognized my capabilities and was willing to invest in our company. However, the precondition was that my position had to be higher than Ran Yao's. I had to be the real decision maker in the company. I couldn't understand why an investor, typically focused only on returns, would want to interfere with team appointments. The leader responded straightforwardly, "Lu Mu, when you left the company, I truly regretted it. You are a rare genius, unlike Ran Yao, who is at best a standout among the average, bound by limited capabilities and vision. His potential is capped. I know you two are lovers. You must have helped him a lot with the portfolio during the interview, right? There's a barrier between ordinary people and geniuses. You can help him temporarily, but not for a lifetime." At the time, I didn't believe it and pushed Ran Yao up the ranks under pressure, keeping my meeting with the head of Yuan Guang a secret to protect his ego. Looking back, I was foolish. His betrayal and recklessness turned me into a joke in the eyes of others and shattered my faith in love. In the end, I was left standing in the rain, completely drenched. From a distance of 2 to 3 meters, Ran Yao took long strides towards me. His eyes were bright when he noticed the wound on my neck. He seemed slightly uneasy. "Does your wound still hurt?" I ignored his concern and countered, "What about Meng Wanqiu? Aren't you two inseparable? Why isn't she with you for such an important interview?" Ran Yao seemed stunned for a moment before lowering his head slightly, his eyes and brows furrowing. "She studies art. She doesn't understand these things. She couldn't help me like you used to. You always had a way of inspiring my designs." His words felt like a switch. And Ran Yao suddenly opened up, reminiscing about the past. I never knew he was such a talkative person, and I smirked self-deprecatingly. "Lu Mu, are you listening?" His voice was hoarse. I silently looked at him, and after a long pause, I calmly confirmed, "Ran Yao, you told Meng Wanqiu about how I was almost raped by my foster father." He took a heavy breath before responding, "She asked me about it on her own. I don't know how she found out." Where else could it have come from? Perhaps from them years later, casually mentioned while resting in bed after a lover's quarrel, or maybe Ran Yao treated it as a joke to tell her during her tantrums. Although I had guessed it, hearing it from his mouth still made my heart ache sharply, as if pierced by a blade, not because of him, but because of my pathetic, laughable decade of sacrifice. The interview was about to begin when Ran Yao suddenly received a phone call. His expression changed drastically, and he started to leave but stopped as the HR personnel called out his name. His steps halted, his expression torn. I smiled. "Is it someone important? Yuan Guang recruits every year. There will be other opportunities. Don't live with regrets." The fire in Ran Yao's eyes suddenly flared. Indeed, how could an interview compare to Meng Wanqiu's safety? As long as Meng's parents accepted him, he wouldn't worry about opportunities to advance in the latter half of his life. Without any hesitation, he gave up the interview. I hurried back in the direction from which I had come. I picked up the documents and decisively headed to the conference room. There, I heard the deep and distant voice of the man sitting at the head of the table. "Due to strategic adjustments within the company, this interview session will be Guangming Group's last external recruitment. Congratulations to all of you for catching the last train." When I returned to campus with the new company offer, rumors had already spread like a flood. Ran Yao had gotten into a fight over the school beauty, and by the time the police and ambulance arrived, the scene was impenetrably crowded. Everyone shared details as if they had seen it with their own eyes. I heard that when he was carried out, he had already passed out, covered in blood, with several teeth knocked out. The scene was a mess, with sheets and covers all over the place. Meng Wanqiu was crying and screaming that she had been assaulted, while the man claimed that it was Meng Wanqiu who had seduced him. The police took statements, and the accounts were inconsistent, making it difficult to determine whether Meng Wanqiu was willing or forced. But Ran Yao's assault is an indisputable fact, and it's uncertain if he will be expelled by the school. When I arrived at the hospital, my adoptive father had already awakened. His front teeth were shattered, his ribs broken, and his leg injured, lying on the bed no different from a dead fish. My adoptive mother was crying hysterically, cursing and demanding Ran Yao's life, while Lucien cowered in a corner, too terrified to make a sound. Seeing me enter the hospital room, Lucien rushed forward, grabbing my collar as if ready to strike, his teeth clenched in fury. "Was it you? Did you do this?" The commotion attracted the police nearby, who glanced over, forcing Lucien to let go of me. I straightened my crumpled collar and spoke in a low, mocking tone. "If you think it was me, why don't you go tell the police? Tell them how you conspired with Meng Wanqiu to ruin me." where your aphrodisiac came from, and discuss how the man lying on that bed assaulted your beloved goddess." Lucien's eyes reddened, his fists clenched tightly, yet he dared not retort. Breathing heavily as if he wanted to devour me alive, I patted his shoulder regretfully, advising him in a sincere tone, "My dear brother, we are family. It pains me to see our father suffering in bed, not to mention, the medical bills are over 1,000 a day. Why don't you negotiate a private settlement with Meng Wanqiu? If our family doesn't pursue Ranyao's assault, and she minimizes the issue, it might just resolve." Lucien gritted his teeth, caught in a long struggle. His gaze fell on our father, filled with anger and helplessness, resenting him for tarnishing his idol, yet blaming himself for not waking up earlier to prevent the tragedy. If his father were branded as a rapist, what would his future hold as the son of a rapist? Finally, he made up his mind and confronted Meng Wanqiu on her way back to school. He thought it would require a lot of persuasion, but to his surprise, the goddess agreed on the spot. Asking only that the charges against Ranyao be dropped, Lucien's feelings were mixed, and despite her forgiveness, his expression hardly improved as he loudly vented his dissatisfaction. "Why do you like him so much? What's so good about him that you would make such a big sacrifice?" Meng Wanqiu's expression darkened instantly. Didn't she want to send that disgusting man to jail for life? Didn't she want to strip Lumu of his skin and scatter his ashes? But what could she do now that it had happened? Once the police started investigating, it would inevitably lead back to her, harming herself as much as her enemy. Why bother? Ranyao's future was meant to soar. He couldn't afford any blemishes or face expulsion from the school. She was willing to endure the injustice for now, waiting for the day Ranyao would achieve great success. Crushing this family is no different than crushing bugs. It won't be long before that day comes. Ayao is a genius. Once she graduates and sets up her company, she will be greeted with endless wealth and an elevated social status. Why should she bother entangling herself with these lowly people, wallowing in the mud? She holds a treasure in her hands, and her future is promising. The gossip that shook the school eventually ended with a settlement between the two families. Meng Wanqiu publicly claimed that on that day, she had taken some medicine and drank a bit of alcohol, which caused her to hallucinate. And it was all a misunderstanding. Although the law no longer pursued Ranyao's responsibility, his involvement in a fight that resulted in serious injury violated school rules and regulations. He was not expelled, but he received a major demerit, and along with it, his scholarship and eligibility to compete in the national science and technology competition were revoked. When the instructor handed me the registration form for the science competition, I gladly signed my name. "Thank you, teacher. I will do my best to bring honor to the academy. The school leaders originally had you in mind from the start. I don't know what got into you, recommending Ranyao instead. Now, after all the twists and turns, it's back to you. It's all fate. Don't disappoint us." Okay, in my previous life, fate did not favor me. Ranyao shone in the competition, receiving offers from multiple companies, and he was proud of this achievement for a long time. Even believing that his abilities were on par with mine. Even years later, when he had become the admired director Ran, he would still occasionally boast about this achievement. After all, it was the only time in Ranyao's career that he beat me. Even though I didn't participate in the competition, he felt that it was because my abilities weren't recognized by the academy, while I represented the school in the competition in the capital. My roommate continuously updated me on Ranyao and Meng Wanqiu's activities. Unable to bear the school's rumors, the two moved out of the school and rented a place together. Meng Wanqiu still hadn't kicked her habit of being extravagant, unwilling to compromise even slightly on her quality of life. To satisfy her, Ranyao neglected to look for a proper internship and instead returned to his old job of fighting in underground boxing rings, coming home injured every night. Unfortunately, his efforts not only failed to earn a word of comfort from his girlfriend, but instead resulted in her hysterical accusations. "How can you earn such disgraceful money? Aren't you studying computer science? Go start a company, make games, and earn big money. Do you want us to end up living in a basement, unseen by the sun, leading a poor life like your parents?" Ranyao's expression darkened frighteningly. Disgraceful, poor. The fatigue and dissatisfaction that had been accumulating day by day, along with the frustration of being cuckolded and unable to retaliate, exploded in that moment. "Did you just realize I'm poor today? The money you despise so much supported me through high school and got me into college. If you look down on my parents so much, why did you get together with me in the first place?" "Oh, I almost forgot." when I confessed to you on the basketball court, you said I wasn't worthy of you. Later, for some reason, you suddenly changed your mind." It was as if he suddenly remembered something, a trace of confusion flashing in his eyes. Could it be because of Lu Mu? Once doubt sets in between people, trust collapses faster than a volcanic eruption. Meng Wanqiu grabbed Ranyao's hand, panicked and at a loss, desperately trying to defend herself. "Of course not, when I rejected you back then. I just wanted to test you, Yao. You are talented, don't waste it in unworthy places, don't worry about the money, I'll figure it out, you just focus on starting your business." The two embraced again, but this time, both had their own agendas. Several times the Meng family tried to take their daughter home, but Meng Wanqiu sternly refused. Even when threatened by her father with disownment, and her mother sobbed as if she was about to kneel right then and there. Nothing could stop the young lady from nurturing her potential. The first game I developed was successfully launched online through Farlight Group, and upon its release, it received an enthusiastic response with a pleasing increase in download numbers. With the experience accumulated from my past life and an understanding of the psychology of the youth, the success of this new game was expected. However, when the first share of the profits hit my account, I was so excited that I couldn't sleep all night, even though in my previous life my fortune far exceeded this amount, and even later, when I drew a monthly salary of 3,000 to 4,000 just for the sake of experiencing the joy of receiving a paycheck, none of those moments were as thrilling as holding my phone and seeing the deposit now. From now on, every penny I earn won't have to be shared with Ranyao. I am me, he is he, and never again will our names be linked together. My mind is full of countless ideas and designs, but he, burdened with punishment and missing opportunities time and again, and with Meng Wanqiu who dreams daily of a luxurious life by his side, how far can he really go? Winning the national design competition brought glory to the school, not only adding a significant achievement to my resume but also directing the best resources of the academy towards me. When the vice president of Farlight Group sent me a congratulatory message, I was in the process of selecting an apartment, a spacious 3-bedroom with a north to south layout and excellent sunlight and views. Importantly, this location was set to be redeveloped into a commercial street in a few years, promising a threefold return, a sure win. Lu Xian, somehow hearing the news of my house purchase, blocked me with his adoptive parents at the company entrance. It turns out, Meng Wanqiu, despite being at a dead end, couldn't curb her extravagant spending habits. Treating him like Ranyao's ATM, not wanting to lose face in front of his goddess, Lu Xian borrowed heavily across various platforms, eventually even resorting to usurers, accumulating a total debt of 500,000 as interest compounded. When debt collectors came knocking, threatening to cut off fingers as interest if he didn't pay within 3 days, his elderly adoptive parents, who saw him as their hope for the future, couldn't bear the thought of seeing their son maimed and turned their sights on me. "You sneaky girl, buying a house without telling us, quickly transfer it to your brother's name and take out 500,000 to help pay the debt," I scoffed, looking at them coldly as if they were strangers. "What brother? Didn't you sever our adoption ties when I turned 18? After all, the state stops providing subsidies to adult orphans." They wanted to make more trouble, but were directly dragged out by security. Unexpectedly, the adoptive family, frightened by the debt collectors, hid here and there, and everything of value in their home was emptied. In desperation, the adoptive father kidnapped Meng Wanqiu, hoping the Meng family would pay to redeem their daughter and cover his online loan losses. Unfortunately, the Meng family had already been swept up in a debt crisis, with houses and cars, all tangible and intangible assets, completely seized and auctioned by the court. In his previous life, before the financial chain broke, Meng's father sent Meng Wanqiu abroad under the guise of studying overseas, carrying a large amount of laundered money, allowing her a few more years of splendor until she returned to the country broke and caught the attention of the nouveau riche Ranyao. This time, Meng Wanqiu's obstinate decisions led to the Meng family's downfall faster and more fiercely than remembered. The adoptive father, having stolen a car from a repair shop and managing to avoid public eyes, took Meng Wanqiu to an abandoned warehouse, only to find out about the Meng family's bankruptcy and their inability to help themselves. In a fit of rage, he took out his anger on Meng Wanqiu. After being tormented all night, Meng Wanqiu finally found a chance to escape at dawn. As he sped away in the car, he never anticipated that the brakes would fail and crash directly into the bridge railing. I saw her again half a month later. After being in a coma for half a month, Meng Wanqiu woke up paralyzed from the waist down, destined to spend her life in a wheelchair. Standing at the door of the hospital room, I heard her wretched cries and remembered waking up in a hospital bed in my past life, being told that my eyes were severely damaged and that I would never see again. My feelings at that time were no different from hers now. What goes around, comes around. It seemed she was atoning for her sins from a past life. I was about to leave when I overheard a conversation between Meng Wanqiu and Ran Yao in the hospital room. Your paralysis is your karma. The man's voice was cold and devoid of emotion, the kind only someone accustomed to commanding authority could possess. From just this one sentence, I knew he had changed. I stopped in my tracks, a myriad of emotions suddenly flooding my heart, all converging into a storm inside me. Meng Wanqiu slowly lifted her head from the hospital bed, her eyes trembling like an earthquake as she looked at Ran Yao a few steps away. Ran Yao, when did you come back? The vacant look in the man's eyes before her suddenly brought back memories of the past. In the days following Lu Mu's death, his gaze towards her was just like it was now, so close, yet seemingly miles away. It was as if she was awakening from a dream. Trying to bridge the gap between them, she attempted to get out of bed. But her legs failed to respond, and inertia threw her off the bed. Despite her disheveled appearance, Meng Wanqiu propped herself up on her arms, trying to crawl towards Ran Yao. The man simply stepped back, avoiding her touch. Don't touch me, you disgust me, Ran Yao, you can't treat me like this, she pleaded, looking up at him with a voice full of misery. I haven't wronged you in this life, I'm the one by your side now. Ran Yao lowered his eyes and laughed mockingly. Can living another life negate the sins of the past? Ask Lu Mu if she would agree. Ask if she can forgive you for blinding her and causing her death. After saying this, he ignored Meng Wanqiu's pleas, turned around, and pushed open the hospital door, his gaze meeting mine directly. At that moment, my heart was a whirlwind of emotions and memories from before my death. Indeed, Meng Wanqiu had played a part in my demise. Merely being paralyzed was far from enough. If I had any doubts about Ran Yao in this life before, they completely dissipated from that moment. From that day on, Ran Yao began to appear frequently by my side. He waited madly at my home, my company, and all the places I often visited, from early morning till dusk, from late autumn to the winter solstice. Watching him in the pouring rain with a desolate and dejected expression, I remembered how soon after my death in a previous life, he wept and repented at my grave, begging the heavens in the heavy rain for another chance. The two figures overlapped, and I laughed mockingly, feeling it dirted my eyes. A few days later, a disheveled woman caught Ran Yao's arm outside the company building, crying inconsolably. It was Ran Yao's mother, who had abandoned him in his youth to elope with a lover. It can be said that his insecure yet proud character stemmed entirely from this woman. In a previous life, I knew of his deep attachment to his mother. He had used all means in secret to find her whereabouts, but on his way back, he was involved in a serious car accident. Upon seeing the woman, Ran Yao froze in place, his eyes red as he stared at the other person, unable to utter the two words despite his hoarse voice. The woman was clearly agitated too, but her eyes did not show the joy of a long-awaited reunion. Instead, they resembled the soul of a ghost fallen into hell. Looking up at the living world, my child, save your brother, he is my life, she pleaded. After remarrying, Ran Yao's mother's younger son was suffering from kidney failure and lay in the hospital in urgent need of a transplant. She had repeatedly tried to find Ran Yao's whereabouts through contacts back in their hometown, but to no avail. Just as she was about to give up, I found her, not only providing her with some money for medical expenses but also Ran Yao's address. She obeyed me as if I were a deity. When she appeared after many years, the first words she spoke were not to ask how he had been over the years but to request a kidney donation for a brother he had never met. For Ran Yao, who had always been proud and longed for maternal love, this was more torturous than death by 1,000 cuts. I knew how demanding that woman could be. Whether it was to repay the debt of birth or to sever this karmic tie, Ran Yao had no choice but to donate his kidney. When Ran Yao woke up from the anesthesia, he saw me waiting in the operating room and tried to get up excitedly, holding the post-operative care instructions. I glanced at him. The doctor said that donating a kidney will damage kidney function, and your immunity and metabolism won't be as good as normal people's, I informed him. Ran Yao was silent for a long time before he whispered, "It doesn't matter." I chuckled. Indeed, a silver-plated spearhead, no big difference, everything is your karma. Ran Yao looked at me, his eyes a tangled mess of emotions, suddenly unraveling as if awakening from a deep dream. Xiao Mu, you, Tears filled his eyes instantly, a look of regret at the bottom. I'm sorry for what I've done to you. His voice trembled violently, his chest heaving as he reached out to touch me. I stood still, repeating like it was a joke, don't touch me, dirty. Ranyao's voice dried up, he closed his eyes in pain, as if my words had uncovered his most unbearable past. You won't forgive me, will you? I looked at him coldly, the irony in my eyes nearly spilling over, then pushed open the door and left straight away. Behind me, alarms soon sounded. Doctors and nurses hurried to the room as the patient's post-surgery emotional disturbance had caused him to faint again. On the hospital rooftop, the wind was strong as I leaned back in a lounge chair, waiting for Meng Wanqiu to wake up. In just a month, Meng Wanqiu seemed to have aged 10 years. Her figure dramatically thinner, due to the lack of funds for a caretaker and constant delays in paying hospital bills. The nurses showed no kindness to her. She opened her eyes groggily from her stupor, lowering her head to see her feet hanging dozens of meters in the air, which terrified her so much that her voice became hoarse like a duck's, afraid to exert any force lest she accidentally fall to her death. Wake up. The view from the rooftop is indeed splendid. No wonder you and Ranyao liked to meet secretly here. Meng Wanqiu turned her head and froze upon seeing me. It's you. I nodded, propping up my chin as I assessed her. Yes, it's me. Surprised, memories flooded back in an instant, and like a moth stepping into a trap, Meng Wanqiu finally realized the danger when she became ensnared in the web. You tricked me. You've always had memories of your past life. Meng Wanqiu's voice grew shrill. It's you who turned me into this hideous, ghostly figure. You want to monopolize Ranyao. Wasn't it enough to benefit from him in your past life? This life you still compete with me. I irritably dug at my ears, then pushed the wheelchair forward half a step, thankfully quieting the shrill voice. Ranyao is in the emergency room downstairs. If he survives, I'll definitely attend your wedding. I meant it sincerely, but Meng Wanqiu didn't believe me. What have you done to Ranyao? Are you crazy? If he dies, you'll be doomed to poverty all your life. I laughed as if I'd heard a joke. How could that be? I have a house and a car, a promising future ahead, and my new company will be approved next month. The first round of financing, 10 million, has already been secured. It's from my former employer, Yuan Guang. Did you not know that? It can't be. It can't be. Meng Wanqiu acted crazily, tearing at her hair, forgetting her disabled legs. She reached out to stand and hit me, but she fell harshly to the ground, her head bleeding profusely, and she passed out. Lu Xian visited Meng Wanqiu in the hospital several times and later brought her back home. The goddess he once adored had now transformed into this sorry state, and Lu Xian felt no sympathy for her whatsoever. His foster father was arrested and jailed for kidnapping and abuse, while his foster mother, fearing debt collectors due to high-interest loans, had run off early on. Meng Wanqiu thought that Lu Xian still had feelings for her and was taking care of her out of affection, which made her quite pleased with herself. Unexpectedly, one evening, a group of people stormed into our house. Lu Xian humbly accepted a stack of banknotes from their hands and then handed over Meng Wanqiu to them. It was much later that I learned from Lu Xian, who had been arrested by the police, that he had sold Meng Wanqiu to a circus. At that place, disabilities were used as a gimmick to make money, and deformed women with any trace of beauty were particularly popular among the audience. When I left the police station, the sunlight was brilliant. My future, too, seemed like frost meeting the warm sun, my heart like plants, growing towards the light.